With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Your Tuesday evening dose of Daytona action in the PRL, and tonight we're going to see the GT3 Fixed and Sprint Series illuminate all of our screens here on RaceSpotTV. Delighted to have your company for the second PRL GT3 installment of 2025. Myself, Darren Thacker, joined by Ron Morns in the commentary box. We've got Ramiro Agustin Chineros up in the broadcast booth, making it all look wonderful for us this evening. Of course, we will think about the GT3 Sprint Series in a little while. For now, we're going to focus on the GT3 Fixed Series and the 35 minutes worth of racing that will have in store for us. Ron, this is going to be an exciting way to kick off the evening. Of course, fixed setups means that for these drivers, particularly around the oval, there's not really much that they can play around with.
Yeah, it is going to be a brilliant start to this evening's racing action, but it's going to be an interesting one as well. You mentioned a very good point in terms of the fixed setups and how these drivers don't have that same little window to experiment in terms of what setups to run. So that's going to be another big thing to talk about coming into the second race of the season. Long Beach 1 week ago was an instant classic of a race. I got to imagine here at Daytona tonight, it's going to be awesome as well.
Yeah, and a great looking calendar for us this season. Of course, Jerez next week, Suzuka. And then we go to circuits like Zandvoort, which is going to be a little bit tighter, a little more difficult to overtake, but really looking forward to seeing how it's going to develop throughout the course of January and February. But of course, after one round's worth of racing, we've had one set of results, and therefore we can bring some standings. This is effectively the race results from last time out at Long Beach, but it's worth noting that Brett Thurman does hold the championship lead going into this race. Ricardo Delgado, second place on 52, and David Bush, the third, on 51. Felix Felice and Dale Pedersen on 48 and 46 respectively, I should say, in the top 5, with Andrew Ellis, Matt Sheriff, Sully Sauer, Jay Steffi and Andrew Trickett being the top 10 from last week's events. We'll have a look at the team, the AM standings, I should say, as well. Colin McKenzie leads the way, not by a great deal, though. It's nice and tightly packed with Nick Bruno and Joel Peguero just in behind. Pete Medria and Ryan Chandler inside the top 5 with Buck Hamilton, Reagan Chandler, Alex Potvin, Seb Gauthier and Thomas rep the top 10 AM drivers for this GT3 Fixed Series. And here are the team standings that we will see this evening. Lunatic Racing lead the way with 91 points after their really good start to the season. Riot Motorsports find themselves in second. SGE a third ahead of SRT Orange in P4, with E3 Motorsports rounding out our top 5. Parabola Midnight are in 6th, with Sim Racing PR in 7th. Parabret Cobalt, BNO Kartamania and VHR Racing, the top 10 teams to kick us into the second round of the season. But as always, before we get into the racing action, we have to thank the sponsors who make these broadcasts possible on RaceSpotTV, starting with Logitech. Logitech G wheels and pedals are equipped with true force feedback to help you feel the road and own the race. Use code Precision5 at checkout on logitechg.com for 5% off of your purchase. Advanced Sim Racing, owned and operated by passionate sim racers, Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminium profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision 5 coupon code. Racebox offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, our button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and get a 5% discount using the Precision 5 coupon code. Butt Kicker products add incredible immersion and realism to every single game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself into the driver's seat with Butt Kicker. Moradness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Morad. It's the head sim racing photography. Capture your finest, proudest, or simply worst moments from your hobby in up to 8K resolution. It is, of course, a great addition to any sim room. And Advanced Motorsports. Get ready to learn to be fast with Advanced Motorsports. Follow them all of their socials to become a better driver. And we thank all of those sponsors who, of course, have supported us from the start of 2025. And we look forward to seeing what the season holds for all of us. Early stages of the season, of course, we're only the second round here in the GT3 fixed series, but already drivers are going to be posturing themselves or wanting to posture themselves towards the front of the championship order.
Yeah, that's a very good point to raise in terms of these racers wanting to get this season kicked off in the best fashion that they can. A journey of 1,000 steps begins with one, but if you twist your ankle on that first step, the rest of that walk ain't going to be a good one. So these racers really looking to have a good one and not have a moment like we just saw that Corvette have coming out of the Le Mans chicane a couple of moments ago, riding on board with Tyler Graff in the number 77 car, currently fittingly slotted in 7th. Funny how the world works with those numbers going on at the moment, but nevertheless, getting back to the point that I was going to raise, oh so important to kick this season off strong and set yourself up comfortably throughout the rest of the season.
This is a season, of course, that we will see twists and turns. We always do in the GT3 fixed and sprint. Just kind of the nature of the championship, and with so many cars circulating the circuit right now, are very much round 49 are on the circuit here this evening. We're going to be getting quite a bit of action throughout the 35 minutes of this fixed race, but the grid's still yet to be decided. Delgado leading the way. Matt Sheriff is in P2 for the time being. Ross Sortino with a good time so far, but a couple of drivers who didn't necessarily have the best of races last week doing a nice job and getting themselves into the top 5 here.
I will say part of the reason why we may see a little bit of shuffling up is just down to the fact that Long Beach and Daytona are just about as far away in terms of racetracks that you can get, not only geographically being on opposite coasts in the U.S., but just in terms of the way the racetracks are. You go from Long Beach, a tight technical street circuit with those concrete barriers looming at every single opportunity, hungry for your safety rating and willing to dish out incident points. Daytona, on the other hand, it's a well-known quantity of a racetrack there. We were talking about it right before we started up this broadcast about how a lot of these drivers up and down the grid very much so are familiar with this racetrack. I mean, hey, this is the second broadcast we've done for the PRL at this very racetrack over the past 24 hours. So these drivers are certainly very familiar with what it's like to drive around Daytona. So I have a feeling, and I'm willing to say this knowing fully well it may age like milk, this may be a bit more of the normal representative lap times that we'll see all throughout this season, now that we're running at a track that's a bit less of an oddity as Long Beach.
Yeah, and I think for this week, for your viewers at home, of course, we're having a bit of a Daytona week here in the PRL. Summed off last night in the LMP3 GT4 Challenge. We've got tonight ET's 3 Sprint and Fixed Series here at Daytona. Tomorrow night in the Truck Series, we'll be at Atlanta, so there is a 1 day off. We're going to be back here again on Thursday night at Daytona for the third and final installment of the week, so really looking forward to that. Of course, the 24 hours of Daytona coming up this weekend in the iRacing special events calendar. So really is a busy time of the year, as it always is in mid to late January at the Daytona International Circuit. So always nice to see, and drivers going to be well accustomed to this circuit by the end of the week if they weren't already. David Bush III going for a little bit of an exploratory line through the Western Horseshoe. Buck Hamilton putting a lap time in the AM class, good enough for the front row of the grid. Oh, as we've seen a crash. That is Buck Hamilton spinning around. Maybe he can't believe quite what his lap time, quite what it is, because P2 in an AM class, Ron, that's incredible.
Yeah, that is a brilliant lap time from Hamilton, hoping to replicate that pace that he's shown and not the incident we just saw coming out of turn number 1. But that is a brilliant lap time to put himself not only on the pole in the AM category, but on the provisional front row as it stands with only about a minute and 45 seconds left to go. That's just about enough time for these drivers to get one more lap time on the board, should be noted, considering this is an open session. Once we run out of time, there will be a little bit of a grace period for these racers to set some better lap times, but that'll just about do it for this qualifying session in the not too far off future. But that is a brilliant lap time from Hamilton. Have to go all the way back to Reagan Chandler in the number 18 car to find the next qualified AM racer. He's all the way down in 14th. Bearing in mind, though, it's only about a half a second between those racers, and that's another point to raise as well. The incredibly close field that we've got at the moment in this qualifying session. Looking at like the difference between Andrew Trickett in the 514s, we see a spinner heading through the Le Mans chicane, but the gap between Trickett in 6th and Sully Sad in 7th, that's only 5,000ths of a second. Insanely close in this qualifying session. This may be a good sign of things to come in the race.
Yeah, and almost to be expected with the fixed setups that we are seeing in this one, but always great to see. Mind you, Buck Hamilton finished P17 overall last week at Long Beach. P2 could very much be where he starts the second round of the season. Absolutely incredible from the number 57. And I think if we see both the pole times, they're going to look pretty similar at the front of the field. Sully Sad will run his way through the Le Mans chicane. Let's see how far through the lap he's going to be able to get. Is he going to be able to finish the lap? We will see. He'll get himself onto the banking, and now it's just flat out, foot to the floor, all the way to the checkered flag as the timer ticks down under that 10-second mark. I'm sure he wouldn't mind getting a position or two further up the order, as I'm sure Richard Delgado wouldn't mind the same, but he's going to come down pit road as the timer ticks to 0. Is there any improvement in the end from Sully Sad as he crossed the line? I don't believe there was, and Sad will stay P7 as we just have a couple more drivers left to set some lap times here.
Yeah, a few more cars left out there on the racetrack. Dave Jensen probably not going to be improving on the count of the fact he went oh so wide coming out of turn number 7, which I don't know about you, Darren, your experience running around here, but turn 7 has to be one of the toughest corners to psych at of the entirety of this race course. 12 corners in all, and that, in my book, is the toughest because it's so hard to try and figure out where the apex is, where you want to make your turn in, and also where to kind of allow that car to slide out a little bit towards that exit curve, and also the transition from the apron back onto the high banks of the 2.5 mile tri-oval. It adds so much character being a thing that these drivers probably would want to have less of in the case of that corner. Certainly I would if I was one of these drivers, but hey, there's a very good reason why I'm behind a microphone instead behind the wheel, as it should be noted that Felix Feliz in the number 10 car just jumped up to 4th a couple of moments ago. Let's see if Luis Ortiz in one of the Corvettes, if he's going to jump up from 6th. I don't believe it will be an improvement from the driver of the number 13 car, but Feliz with a last-minute jump up to the 2nd row.
Yeah, and good stuff for Felix Feliz, getting it in right at the end of the session when it matters in that number 10 car. And he's going to be right at the sharp end with the 43 of Matt Scherf up there as well. Matt Scherf's got his fans I've seen in the YouTube chat. Great to have you guys getting engaged on a Tuesday night here on RaceSpotTV. Barney furiously waving that checkered flag as everybody has now made sure that they have finished the session. We can focus in more on some of those crazy people. Quite know what that's called, but hey, we'll come back to that. We'll firstly have a look at the starting grid here for this race at Daytona. Drivers going to get into what, but we can run you through the 49 drivers that will make up the grid here this evening, starting with Ricardo Delgado. He will be on the pole ahead of the AM pole sitter of Buck Hamilton. First time in quite a while that we've seen that in the GT3 Fixed Series, that both the front row is made up of both of the pole sitters in their respective classes. Matt Scherf is P3 for Hyperion Racing, and he's not too far ahead of Felix Feliz with the top 4, but by less than 0.2 of a second. Ross Sortino and Luis Ortiz round out the top 6 as they make up row number 3, with Andrew Trickett and Sully Sad on row 4 with only 0.005 between those two. Brett Thurman, championship leader coming into this race, and Herbert Pineda are the top 10 on the starting grid, with Tyler Graff and David Bush the third making up row number 6. Jay Steffi in P2 in AM class, Ryan Chandler are on row 7, with Jason Park, Dave Jensen, Thomas Repp and Luke Davis making up the top 18. Drop Aguero and Ian Southern rounding out our top 20, with Dale Pedersen and Sean Mulholland on row 11. Pete Medria and Ryan Chandler are on row 12, and you can still see how close these guys are to the pole time. Less than a second off. Colin McKenzie and Jared Deploy on row 13. Alexander Potvin, Nikos Sanadakis, Andrew Vanaro and Seb Gautier rounding out our top 30. And at 30, the amount of cars we will have within the second of the pole time. Richard Saavedra just outside, and therefore he will start from 31st. Nick Bruno will start from 32nd, with Sean Murphy and Aaron Sunday on row 17. Dave Peterson and Waldo Walden make up row number 18, with the top 40 rounded up by David Morse, Evander Jonesy Field, Sam Smeltzer and Sean Duhamel. Mark Bray and Ian Cabana on row 21 in 41st and in 42nd, with Neil Alexander and Christopher Rhines on row 22. Scott Jeffries and Kevin Berquist, Drew DeVess and Jacob Fickner, I should say, make up rows 23 and 24 in the grid, rounded out with around 49 that was Matthew right at the back of the field. So busy grid, very busy grid here for the Daytona race, Ron, and I can't imagine it's going to be very short of action for 35 minutes worth of racing here.
Yeah, I think this 35-minute race that we have coming up going to be no shortage of overtakes sprinkled all throughout, and no shortage of incredible racing. And we're going to see a lot of stuff that I think is going to be a general theme all throughout this entire week of racing action here on RaceSpotTV, of all the action going on iRacing at the present moment. Going to see the drafting, the slipstreaming, heading down through turns 1 and 2 on the oval, and 3 and 4 on the oval as well. Usually you see on road courses a decent chunk of the oval skips. No, here at Daytona, it's, what do you say, probably about like 1,000 feet of oval that we don't actually use around here, and I feel like 1,000 feet is definitely a bit on the long end in terms of the estimates, but nevertheless, this racetrack has such unique twists and turns to it, and going to give us a unique style of racing, which I think is part of the reason why Daytona has that mystique to it that makes the racing so exciting to watch.
And the prestigious nature of the circuit as well is definitely going to be reflected in what we see this evening. Of course, we've run it quite a few times in the PRL in a GT3 here at Daytona, 12 times to be exact. And we've had more than our fair share of winners, the likes of David Michaud, Michael Davis, Drew Becker, Arno Janest, Michael Terrafino, to name a few. Jake Cummings, Kwok Nguyen, twice that is for Kwok Nguyen, Sean Provost, Chris Stewart as well. To be fair, Sean Provost and Chris Stewart are most recent winners in July of 2024. First time we're here in 2025, and it's definitely going to be an exciting one to kick off the new year. And the sun setting over Daytona Beach in Florida. It's always nice to have the fantastic visuals, of course, that we get on iRacing, and the blimp we can just about point out in the sky. So all the fun of the fair for us here at Daytona. I don't know, Ron, have you ever been to Daytona?
I sadly have not, despite being the resident American on these broadcasts. I've yet to go down to Daytona. Last time I went down to Florida, period, was many, many moons ago, but I need to make some sort of visit there at some point. I used to do race control for a different series on iRacing with a person who lives like a half a mile away from International Speedway Boulevard right outside the track, so it's maybe I have to take a visit in the not-too-distant future around this wonderful historic racetrack. You think of Daytona, some people think of NASCAR, other people think of IMSA, and history buffs like me kind of think of IndyCar and the very odd race house held all the way back in 1959 around here. But Daytona, a wonderful track, and a wonderful pole lap from Ricardo Delgado in the number 3 Corvette, riding on board with him, and his perspective through all of this with that big Mustang punching a hole in the air. Now let's get this here real quick, Dara. Do you think that draft assistance from the back end of that big chunk that is the Ford Mustang may have been part of the reason why the 3 car grabbed the pole?
It's definitely going to be a consideration to pull in here, because Delgado, of course, getting that slipstream is going to help him out all the way around the oval. You were right about saying that not even the 1,000 feet of this circuit will not be, or 1,000 feet of the oval not being used. Definitely a track layout that means that we use pretty much all of the oval and the infield section as well. So we get the best of both worlds. And for Ricardo Delgado, look at the amount of slipstream he's going to get. This is absolutely perfect for the number 3 driver, and he can use it all the way up to the line, gaining hundredths every single passing second. And Delgado, this is fantastic for him in the 878, knowingly or unknowingly, giving Delgado a fantastic chance, and maybe giving him the best chance at pole position with the slipstream that he received. We're getting in towards the race though. Drivers starting to grid up, and we are almost ready to get going for 35 minutes of racing here at Daytona. I have to say, I haven't been here personally myself. I'd love to, but as you can imagine, it's quite a ways away for me. And January, busy time of the year, difficult to get too much time off, isn't it? So would require quite a lot of time, but I'd love to get here, particularly for the 24, because it really is one of the most prestigious events in motorsport, isn't it?
Oh yeah, the Rolex 24 in real life, and even the iRacing Daytona 24 that we'll be broadcasting here on RaceSpotTV and also the iRacing social media networks it's one of the coziest races of the year. Very odd way to describe a motor race, but I will back this up here real quick. As someone who lives in the city of Philadelphia, kind of in the northeast of the U.S., sort of, kind of, Canada, I guess, not really, who knows. But either way, it's north enough whereby we get some snow around this time of year. And whenever I think of the Daytona 24, I always think of just being snowed in and watching a fantastic race back in my childhood days. So Daytona, I really want to make a visit here as well. Want to also make a visit to Watkins Glen, which I feel like is a little bit more feasible considering I'm in Pennsylvania, but still Daytona, an absolutely brilliant racetrack, and probably going to play host to a fantastic race. Looking through at the wonderful manufacturer representation we've got in GT3s nowadays, one thing I absolutely love, and something iRacing has been great about doing over the past couple of seasons, and the past couple of years for that matter, is increasing the manufacturer representation on iRacing. You got that brand new McLaren, got that brand new Acura for this season. You also got the Corvette, the Mustang, the Porsche. You've got a whole bunch of cars that have either been refreshed or completely brought in from scratch into this service. We got a lot of them up there at the front. Got 2 Corvettes though locking up the front row, and another Corvette a little bit farther back, a McLaren and a Porsche locking at the second row. But Dara, this is going to be a brilliant race. I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to the draft fest that's going to follow.
Yeah, how big are the trains going to be? That's the real question. Ricardo Delgado will hope that he can get away from the front and run away. P2 in the championship coming into this race. He wouldn't mind having the championship lead all to himself. As he gets us going, he's put his foot down and he's accelerated away from the rest, and he's caught pretty much everybody else napping. As we go green here at Daytona for the 35 minutes of the PRL GT3 Fixed Series. And down into turn 1 here at Daytona we go. It's not the best of starts for Buck Hamilton, leading the AM category, getting swarmed at the moment by cars left and right. But it's a fantastic start for Ricardo Delgado as he worked his way through the opening couple of corners. The International Horseshoe is where we arrive for the first time in the race. A couple of 2 wide moments, but drivers already settling themselves out one by one, it seemed, particularly at the front of the field. But Delgado getting away nicely at the front of the field. He's being chased though. Matt Schreff not going to let him get away too much.
Oh, and I think there may have been an incident a little bit farther in the back heading down into the first horseshoe, so that's going to take one driver out of contention already. I think they've rejoined the racetrack, but I saw them backwards coming into the corner, so already an incident taking place. Gotta say, though, a very clean start considering I got 49 GT3 race cars barreling their way down into turn number 1 at Daytona with a whole lot of wind at their backs and a whole lot of speed coming their way as well. But Delgado certainly having a lot of speed, leading it over Scherf. And Buck Hamilton not getting off to the best start in the world as we see that incident, a big hit with the outside Armco barrier from Waldo Walden in the number 84 car. That's a pretty sizable impact. There's some major damage on the front of that Ferrari, I'm sure.
Yeah, not going to be looking terribly good for the time being, but we will keep an eye on the progress of a couple of the cars further back in the order. But as we make our way out of the Le Mans chicane for the first time in this race, we're kind of going to get a sense of where we lie with the trains. Delgado, Scherf and Sortino are a little bit further away from Buck Hamilton, and Felix Felice for the time being. A couple of little breaks in the train. Generally, though, a lot of drivers sticking to the fortune. It's going to take until about lap 2 or 3 for us to really be able to see who is going to be where. 3 wide for the lead, that is, maybe. Just about into turn number 1. Delgado's going backwards. Through goes Scherf, through goes Sortino. Oh, no, though. Sortino's had a moment on the exit. He's going to get tapped around, and he is off into the wall on the exit of turn number 1. He's going to drop right the way down the order and completely out of contention. That's Felix Felice going slowly as well. He may have been the driver to tap around Ross Sortino, who was running right at the front not too long ago. And chaos at the moment with David Bush going off the circuit. Podium in the last week is not going to be finishing there for the, well, if this is anything to go by.
Yeah, David Bush having the save of a lifetime coming out of turn number 4. Look at that, nearly bump drafting, heading down into the second horseshoe. These racers, they saw that lap 1 was clean, and they're saying, you know what, let's bring the thunder on lap 2. Already having multiple collisions. I think you are right, that was Felix Felice who tagged that stopped Ferrari coming out of turn number 1. We're going to take a look at that moment involving Sortino in the number 20 Ferrari. Gets that move done on the pole sitter of Delgado, but gasses it up a little bit too early, and then gets hit once, and then it's going to get hit yet again, I think. No, you can just see the bumper pops off the back of that Ferrari like a misshapen Lego, and then a lot of chaos going involved. Not sure how Felix Felice picked up the damage that he did to send him deep into the infield, heading down into the first horseshoe. Mega off pace, but either way, lots of drama breaking out through the first few corners at the very start of the second lap.
Yeah, and Sortino and Felice now right the way down the order, down in 47th and in 48th. Not looking ideal for those two as they tried to recover. Nick Bruno having his fair share of issues as well. And he was off the circuit down at turn 2 and turn 3. Back to live pictures with Herbert Pineda trying to work his way through on Tyler Graff, maybe even Luis Ortiz as well. Ortiz has gone high and wide, almost to let through these guys, and Pineda's going to say thank you very much on the inside of 1, on the inside of 2, and Pineda is going to overtake Tyler Graff as well and go from 8th to 6th. Without really making it look like he was breaking a sweat. Great move from Pineda. Brett Thurman, of course, championship leader coming into this race just in behind. He's fighting well with Tyler Graff as they go side by side through the international horseshoe, but differing lines for the opening corner and differing results for some of our drivers.
Pineda, though, going that 2-for-1 deal, heading off into turn number 1. I think there may have been a moment for Sean Murphy in the number 11 car. He's dropping down like a rock as we take a look at a replay to see what happened here to the driver, the number 7 Porsche. Contact being made heading through turn number 1, and that's a spinner. That is an Acura, and big contact being made coming out of the corner, and a huge hit into that pit barrier heading through the 2 and 3 chicane. That's going to be a big amount of damage. Multiple incidents befalling these racers. Coming out of turn number 1, we kind of talked about it in the, and more drama heading off into turn number 4. These racers clearly not a fan of their fabricators, giving them a whole lot of work after this race is said and done. But nevertheless, seeing turn number 1 be a bit more of a trouble spot than we saw in the broadcast we did last night, Dara.
Yeah, but still very much a point on the circuit where we're going to be seeing a lot of the racing action, differing lines, great runs all the way around the oval. It is really a good spot to keep an eye out for. The battle starting to develop as we work our way through the rest of this race. Andrew Venaro having his own issues at turn 1. Clearly, driver's struggling, and he's on the racing line. That's a horrible, horrible place to be stuck. And there's absolutely nothing you can do. If you try and drive forward, you can guarantee there'll be drivers going around, and drivers, even though we've had about 20 come through, still finding themselves caught up in the incident. So unfortunate for those guys, but we'll have to see if anybody can recover from that in the remaining half an hour of the race. Herbert Pineda setting the fastest lap of the race overall so far, which is impressive to see from the driver in P6, clearly showing that the drivers right at the sharp end of the field are not necessarily pulling away from this in the early stages. Field spread still isn't necessarily terribly wide. Top 16 split by less than 10 seconds as Sam Smeltz has gone for a bit of a spin on the exit of the Le Mans chicane.
Another driver having a spin. Lots of drivers really struggling for grip at this early stage of the race. Looking to settle into a groove, but I don't think these racers have been able to do it yet. I mean, bearing in mind, we're only, like 7 minutes into a 35-minute long race. So still plenty of time left in these drivers' back pockets to try and settle their race into some sort of groove and be a bit more calm heading through at the rest of this race. However, we've still got battles to talk about up and down this grid. Speaking of up, right right at the up end of the field. The north end of the field, you've got Scherf still leading this race in the number 43 McLaren. You've got the pole sitter, though, of Delgado in that 3 Corvette, definitely within striking distance. And look at Buck Hamilton in the number 57 car. He's been feeling really, really quick thus far in this race. Started this race in P2 as an AM driver. That's an incredibly impressive result for the driver of the number 57 car. And let's see if he will be able to hold on between now and the checkered flag.
Yeah, still a very long way to go, though, with the slipstream effect that we're really seeing. It's going to be difficult, I think, to say that this is going to be the finishing order, but we can always try and predict how it's going to go. Well, quite well for us last night, didn't it, Ron? In predicting what we thought was going to happen. Hopefully, some of that luck will be reflected tonight. Brett Thurman going purple now in the number 69 car, and he's looking to recover back up in towards the top 5, which is where I'm sure he would love to be, particularly considering that he comes into this race as the championship leader. Sam Smeltzer, oh no, what's happened to the 36? Not another spin for the driver who's currently struggling down in P45. Oh, it's just almost a half spin that's gonna create itself into yet another spin. And the 36 driver, I think that was resetting to the pit lane. So hopefully that's not the end of Sam that we see this evening, but he is already a lap down. Seb Gauthier, Sean Murphy, Sam Smeltzer, Ross Sortino, Andrew Venaro, and Felix Felice all struggling right towards the back of the order. Everybody else, 42 drivers, still in the leading train, if you can call it that. 38 seconds is the gap. But mind you, there's the top 39 split by only 29 seconds. So very much a closely spread field after what has been just over 8 minutes of the race so far. And with it calming down a touch, Ron, I think it's fair to say that I think drivers are now going to be starting to think about how to work their way through the order slowly but surely, but also picking their moments and choosing their battles.
And one more thing that's going to be popping up in these drivers' minds is thinking about those pit stops, which played such a vital role in that Long Beach round 1 week ago, Dara. In both the fixed and the sprint race, we saw battles get decided heavily. Battles get altered heavily because of a mistimed run or just misjudged run down pit lane. Some drivers making some very crucial mistakes. And around a racetrack like this, very easy to make some mistakes on pit lane, mainly coming out of the pits. But never mind that. Look at the side-by-side fight that we got Tyler Graff having a fantastic view of, heading off into turn number 1. That was Herbert Pineda and I think Sully Sad heading off through turn number 1 side-by-side. Looks like they have now single-filed out with Pineda in the 99 car, getting that move done to break his way up into the top 5. Turn 1 seeming to be the premier overtaking opportunity for these racers, but we've seen it go good and we've seen it go bad as well, Dara. That's a corner where you want to get the move done, but you want to feel incredibly confident in the way your race car is driving. Otherwise, if you get a little bit wrong, you're going to end up in a world of trouble.
And we did see that yesterday, didn't we, in the LMP3 GT3 Challenge, that turn 1 really was the focus of attacks from drivers. They could try and make the move there. If they couldn't necessarily get it done at turn number 1, they could run it all the way down to the International Horseshoe, and it could then continue into the Western Horseshoe. And if we're still going side by side, it'll be sorted out by the time we get to the Le Mans chicane, but then it'll restart once again at turn number 1. We're seeing that kind of thread carrying on here this evening. We run our way down in towards the Le Mans chicane with Delgado, Scherf, and will be Buck Hamilton just in behind, of course, the AM leader, having an absolutely stellar race. Closest driver is Reagan Chandler in P11, and the points advantage that Buck Hamilton will be getting at the moment is going to be absolutely monumental for a championship, which often comes down to a point or two right at the end of the season, I should say. It's a really good start to the evening for Buck Hamilton. Scherf still going for the move around the outside of Ricardo Delgado, but Delgado will have that one done as they make their way. In fact, that's a lapped car as they run their way through. That's the number 11 car that they are lapping. That is Sean Murphy, who is a lap down, and Delgado and Hamilton negotiating their way through, but still quite a ways off the leader of Matt Scherf.
Yeah, I was just going to mention the fact that Scherf has really checked out. I mean, a 1.5 second gap, that's not insurmountable by any means, doubly so considering we got about 24 minutes of this race left to go. But Scherf pulling that gap in the span of just a couple of laps there. I remember mentioning the fact the front 3 overall were covered by less than a second a matter of a few laps ago. Now it's 2 between all of them, and a 1.5 seconds just between Scherf and Delgado, the front 2 in this race alone. So not sure what Matt Scherf has done kicking on the hyperjets to grow a gap like that, but well done to Scherf to be able to get into a groove very, very quickly and start to shake off his competitors like a bad case of fleas.
Yeah, it's been a decent couple of laps for the number 43 driver, as we see Ricardo Delgado work his way through along with Jay Steffi working his way through on the oval. They're not too close for the time being as they run their way in towards the Le Mans chicane. You'd be a little bit uncomfortable if you were finding yourself a little bit too close down in towards this fast-flowing section of corners. We can often see some big incidents down there, particularly in some multi-class racing, with drivers misjudging exactly how other drivers are going to be running that part of the lap. As we run our way through to up towards the line, we're going to see Herbert Pineda try and get through on Andrew Trickett as they make their way across the start-finish line. This is, of course, the battle for P4 overall, P3 in class. And let's see as they run their way across the start-finish line once again. Can Pineda find his way around the 514? He's looking for a bit of an outside line, going to drop back towards the inside line though, because he's very much aware that Sully Sad is just in behind. And it is easy if you're trying to go offline and make a move, basically go offline to force an overtaking opportunity. It can allow other drivers behind you to get a bit of a sniff, take the conventional racing line and almost put you off the line that you were hoping to get onto.
Yeah, I think that is a very good point that you raised there, Dara, talking about the fact that an attempted overtake for one spot could result in you just dropping down like an anvil dropped out of a helicopter. So these racers looking to avoid that at all costs. You know, it's an entirely different version of Daytona, but you can draw comparisons in terms of that sort of stuff going on in these GT3 races to something you'd see in a NASCAR race around here running on the high banks. You pull out to try and get a move done, and if you don't time it well, you're just going to drop down like it's going out of style. So these racers looking to avoid that at all costs. The real question is, though, how exactly do you avoid that? Do you need to get the move done in a different section? Do you need to get a bit more comfortable in the way your race car is driving? Do you just have to hope that you have as good of a run as you could possibly have heading through some of these corners? We'll say, though, I just noticed this, not in the corner of my eye, in the center of my eye. These headlights are going on. I'm curious here, Dara, as the sun's going down, will this affect the way these race cars are driving, starting this race in the daylight, sort of, kind of, just a little bit of crack of daylight more than anything else, but ending it under the lights? These race cars are going to be driving totally different by the time of the checkered flag as they were at the green.
Yeah, and being able to run that balance is going to be a really, really interesting part of this race, and it's going to be key to drivers who are hoping to win this race. Round 2, of course, of 2025. Tyler Graff all the way around the outside. Can he get this one done on Sully Sad? He will have the inside line for the International Horseshoe as well if he needs to help, needs a little bit more help to get the move done, I should say, and he will, because all the way around the outside goes Sully Sad. That's not quite the right line, though, for the number 79, and Brett Thurman is going to take full advantage of that in the 69 and work his way up into P7. They're still nearly side to enter the dog leg, as it will be Thurman and Sully Sad gets that position back. Thurman almost being, well, forced off the road nearly as he comes back down the inside at the Western Horseshoe, but that one won't work out in the end for Brett Thurman, and Sully Sad will find himself back into P7. But all of that battling is going to allow Tyler Graff to have a little bit of breathing room and maybe be able to focus a little bit more on getting after Pineda and Trickett than focusing on that battle in behind again.
Door-banging racing action is always a little bit tense if you're behind the wheel, but I gotta imagine door-banging racing action heading off into turn number 5 is just about the most terrifying experience you could ever have on the iRacing platform, as we see a spin for Ryan Chandler in the number 75 car, heading through the International Horseshoe and having to pull off a 3-point turn, not to rejoin the racetrack, although he did rejoin the racetrack, just trying to rejoin at a better angle to avoid a T-bone collision with a competitor. I remember a couple of years ago with the real-life Rolex 24, there was a driver who tried rejoining the track coming out of turn 7 at a 90-degree angle to the oncoming traffic, and you can imagine how that ended in a T-bone collision that took both cars out of the race. So looking to try and avoid that in the sim, as we see some drivers already making the call down pit lane. That's Brett Thurman in the number 69 car making the call to pit.
Yeah, and Brett Thurman, one of the first front runners to blink, and let's see if this is going to be a good move here from the number 69 driver, of course, leading the championship after winning the opening race over in Long Beach 7 days ago. Gets stopped on his marks and he will get the car service. Should come out to a nice bit of clean air as well, so this could be a really nice strategy for Brett Thurman at the moment. He will disappear out of the top 30, well out of the top 30, by virtue of being the first driver to come into the box, but he will come back to relevance, I'm sure, when everybody else makes their way down pit road over the course of the remaining 80 minutes. Of course, with it being a 35-minute race, I think the end of this lap upcoming would be the half-distance marker if drivers are trying to split it into a half and a half system such as that. But of course, drivers we've seen go a little bit longer, push it as far as they can into the race, maybe to avoid getting themselves caught up in any kind of traffic. That's not a bad strategy at all, but that could be changing as drivers try and judge exactly how the traffic's going to sit, with drivers pitting in front of them. They may find themselves, particularly Matt Scherf, may find himself in some of the drivers that have already pitted and in a bit of a train, so it may even be more effective to come into the pit lane earlier than he was otherwise expecting, to make sure he avoids that kind of traffic. All considerations that we will come to see over the next 10 minutes, I'm sure. Andrew Trickett working his way around the oval section. Halfway through the race we are now, and I think we will see a couple of drivers in this lap.
Yeah, let's see if these two who are following on screen at the moment are going to be them. No, it looks like Trickett and Herbert Pineda going to stay out for yet another lap. These two setting ourselves up for a really good battle for the final two spots inside the top five. Pineda trying to get moved on around the outside of that 514 Porsche right in front of him, but not close enough to get the move done on Trickett for now. However, there's still plenty of time left to go in this race. 17 minutes left on the clock, and Pineda has put on a rousing drive thus far in this race there. Made up a whole lot of spots. He's been the center of attention thus far, and not for any bad reasons at all. He has been pretty quick. Currently on the fifth lap of the race in that number 99 car, and I think I wouldn't even discount him maybe being a bit of a thorn in the side to the likes of Sheriff Delgado and Buck Hamilton if his run through the pits is really well executed, as we see Nick Bruno going off the track in the 222.
Yeah, and he won't want to talk about that in the 222, will Nick. And he, I think, towed back to pit lane and hasn't emerged since, so he's been in there a little while now. Hopefully we'll see him back on the circuit, but not exactly ideal for Nick Bruno in this race. I wanted to quickly mention something now that we're nearly 20 minutes in that I noticed just before we got going, but I never had a time to mention. Thomas Rep, the 878, was in the chat, in the YouTube chat just before the race, saying, "Let's go me." He was the driver who intentionally or inadvertently gave Ricardo Delgado the tow that may or may not have helped him get pole. Nice little touch there from Thomas Rep to say that that was him in the 878, and he's doing a great job at the moment up in P4 in class. We'll see if he can stay there, maybe even get himself onto the AM podium. We'll look forward to that. Evander Jonesfield, we just saw in the inset there, having a little issue down at the International Horseshoe, but back going once again as we're seeing the battle restart here for P3. Trickett and Pineda, no side-by-side down into turn one this time around, but we are starting to see, Ron, some of the drivers coming into the pit lane, and that timing tower I think is going to start lining up like a Christmas tree, although prematurely with it being January.
Yeah, a little bit premature. I mean, I've had the Christmas tree up in my living room since December of 2023. Yes, I know that is bad. I think we talked about that before we started up this broadcast here, Dara, and that's entirely on me. And any folks who would like to judge me in the YouTube chat, please feel free to do so, because oh boy. But that left-hand side of your screen got light up with those pit calls, as we see Bergquist in the number 64 Ferrari having a moment coming out of turn number one. That's going to be a simple tap of the barrier, going to put some damage on the front end of that race car. Just saw the at 1 point M leader come down pit lane a couple of moments ago. Some more drivers still down pit lane as it stands at the present moment. Looking at Richard Savager down pit lane, Drew Ducey running down in 33rd. Lots of drivers throughout this field making that call to come into the pits. I gotta wonder, since we saw that at one point third place runner make that call to come down pit lane, I'm curious as to whether or not that will spawn a call to pit from Matt Scherf or Ricardo Delgado this time by.
Yeah, it's going to be busy down pit lane, I'm sure, in the coming laps. 14 minutes left to go, and still so many drivers will yet to take their mandatory pit stop in this race. David Busch, the third, being one of them, as he looks to try and get through on Luis Ortiz as they run their way around towards that pit lane. Matt Scherf has come in. Who else is going to be diving into the pit lane? Luis Ortiz is going to be one of them. Trickett, Pineda as well, as is David Busch the third. But he's going around the outside. Does he get it stopped? I think he does. And that's a great little move from David Busch into the pit lane to get through on Luis Ortiz. Let's see if he can stay there after they stop in their boxes.
It may be January, but that was a Christmas miracle. The fact he was able to drop the anchors and slow that car up enough to be able to make that pit lane speed limit line. That was terrifyingly close. Full commitment, though, from Busch to be able to have that aggressive entry into the pits, and seeing all those racers, they're going to be trickling their way out of the pits right now as we're following Ricardo Delgado in the number 3. He's still out there on the racetrack. Look at this, though. Full commitment, full send from David Busch the third. Gets another position gain there. May have turned those front tires into rectangles, but nevertheless, well done from the driver, the number 32 Audi. A lunatic in terms of his full commitment coming into the pits.
Yeah, but it worked out for him very well, and I think he'll be delighted at being ahead now of Luis Ortiz and even Dave Jensen as well. So definitely chances throughout the rest of the race for David Busch to work his way up maybe a little bit higher up the order. It all feels very lonely for Ricardo Delgado around the circuit. He's at the Le Mans chicane. Pretty much nobody anywhere near him. The number 3 leads the championship and he leads the race, but I'm sure he'll be coming down pit road this time by the final driver to have to make his mandatory pit stop. And where is that going to shake him out in the order? Of course, was around the likes of Matt Scherf, Buck Hamilton before the pit stop phase. Will he come out in a similar part of the racetrack? We will see. Very safe on the stoppers, not trying any kind of late braking maneuver like we saw from David Busch III. He will get stopped onto his box. Where's the number 3 above to denote where his pit box is? Going to be right near the front of the field. Of course, he was on pole position all the way to the end, and he will get stopped. But this is Matt Scherf, and let's see if he can get back into the race lead in the 43.
Yeah, this is going to be the money stop for Ricardo Delgado in that number 3 car. Will it be the 3 or will it be the 43 getting the job done? Delgado already out and away, 11 seconds stopped in the box. Let's see, trying to pick at that number 3 Corvette on pit exit. He's already heading through the narrow alleyway section on pit exit. He's already past the pit lane speed limit line. This is going to work out really well for Ricardo Delgado. Matt Scherf now going to be behind Delgado to the tune of about 1.25 seconds. So that is going to be really well executed from the driver of the number 3 Corvette.
Yeah, and looking to claim the championship lead is Ricardo Delgado, and going about it the right way so far in this race. Great strategy to get himself over a second in the lead, and Matt Scherf all of a sudden with a little bit of work to do. Maybe not something that he necessarily expected after leading the middle phase of this race, but he is now the chaser. And he is going to have to try and chase down Ricardo Delgado and overtake, which is, of course, no mean feat here at Daytona. This is the battle, though, in behind, led by Buck Hamilton, the leader in the AM class, with Pineda, Trickett and Graff in behind. Mind you, even though Hamilton has got a big margin in the AM class back to the likes of Dave Jensen, he won't want to lose these positions because the points that he garners by finishing 3rd overall is what makes the difference, rather than the points for winning the AM class.
Yeah, the overall spot is what matters. I have a feeling that Buck Hamilton is going to be fighting tooth and nail to hold on to that final overall podium spot. We've got a whole lot of racers behind him, though, that are certainly feeling antsy. We got Herbert Pineda, who previously held the 5th lap of the race. This man who we're running on board with, though, Tyler Graff, nearly getting the move done into the apron, going back onto NASCAR 3 and 4. Just got the move done on Andrew Trickett to slip his way up into 5th, but that was terrifying from the driver of the number 77 car. Full commitment, not lifting, coming out of the bus stop, did not want to sacrifice his run. He'd rather munch some cones instead of lifting. However, he's still got a challenge on his hands with Trickett trying to get the move done back around the outside, heading off into turn 1. Meanwhile, Buck Hamilton and Pineda side by side right in front. Those two battling for the final spot on the overall podium. Hamilton on track for a win in the AM category with about 9.5 minutes left on the clock, and big contact being made into the International Horseshoe.
Yeah, Pineda going around. The driver in the McLaren won't be terribly pleased, and he is going to come into contact with the likes of Tyler Graff and Andrew Trickett in their battle. And all of a sudden, Brett Thurman may be starting to get involved. Championship leader coming into this round. He's currently down in P6 after working his way through the order. Let's see if he can get ahead of the likes of Trickett and Graff as they have come to blows. It's definitely given Buck Hamilton a little bit of breathing room, though, with 9 minutes to go. He's got now 2 seconds of an advantage back to Tyler Graf, and let's see if he can manage that towards the end. But definitely not the finest moment of this race so far in Pineda. Yeah, getting, I think it's fair to say, taken out a little bit there by Andrew Trickett in the 514.
Yeah, it was a tough incident heading down into the International Horseshoe a couple of moments ago. Going to cut that battle down to size. Buck Hamilton now with a pretty sizable cushion back to Tyler Graf. Andrew Trickett still within striking distance of the driver of the number 77 car, though. And you got to look at Brett Thurman, this man behind the wheel, the number 69 Porsche, right behind the 514 Porsche of Trickett. We may start to see those drivers begin to battle as Graf starts to pull away from the front of Trickett's 514 race car. Look at some battling right behind, involving the number 13 Corvette of Luis Ortiz. Let's see, is he going to maybe try and get moved on Thomas Rep in the 878 car? Rep currently running third of the AM drivers at the moment, right behind Dave Jensen, though, in the 692 car. So we could see a battle for the second place spot of the AM drivers at 11th overall. That would be a really interesting fight, but I think Luis Ortiz may try and get involved in this, trying to get a move done around the outside into turn number 1 on Rep. Not close enough, and going for a spin coming out of the corner.
Yeah, getting a little bit too greedy. Hold your brakes there, Luis. Oh, nearly getting it all wrong. Well, did get it all wrong, but nearly getting it even more wrong. And getting back onto the racing line. Awful spot to be parked, and I think he's going to tow it back to pit lane. Disaster for Luis Ortiz. Really gutting for him. Running in such a great position, and yeah, I mean, he was just overtaken by David Busch, wasn't he? Into the pit lane. David Busch now inside the top 10. Luis Ortiz now well outside the top 30. David Morse going for a spin at the Western Horseshoe. Something about that car just doesn't look right to me. That rear right, you can see the suspension didn't look like it was on the car properly, so that may be one of the reasons why David Morse had to tow it back to pit lane. But as it is, 7 minutes to go, this is the kind of stage of the race where you really do not want to be making any kind of mistake. You've worked so hard over the last half an hour, you don't want to throw it away now.
Yeah, a mistake in the final 6.5 minutes of a 35-minute long race that's the sort of thing that sticks with you for a while. So these racers looking to avoid that at all costs. They're going to take a look at another angle to see the drama involving Morse. And there you can see, well spotted there, Dara, the damage on the back end of that number 21 McLaren of Morse. That was a pretty significant whack coming out of the first horseshoe, spinning and nowhere to go. The onslaught of race cars just pile driving into the rear right corner of that race car and giving him some pretty bad suspension damage, which did come back to bite him on the butt. So that's going to take that car out of this race. But we still got a lot of cars left in this race, and following some of them up towards the north end of the field. But you brought up a very good point a couple of moments ago there, Darren, passed it off to me, talking about the fact that a mistake at this point of the race would just be absolutely heartbreaking. We only got a handful of laps left to go, and I feel like these racers that aren't involved in a battle just looking to remain in their own lane and try and bring this one home.
Yeah, and bring it home they will try. Good move through the field from Tyler Graf, of course, from P11 up to P inside the top 10 here. Colin McKenzie, don't count him out for a good race either, from 25th up to 15th. Drew DeVest from 47th to 26th, nearly gone through half of the field there. So really good performances up and down the field, and with a 49 car grid. It's kind of what you can get here. Ortiz, sadly for him, started in P6 down into P40, and this is why the number 13 driver trying to go around the outside at the opening turn, getting onto the power a little bit too early, and that rear end starting to go around, just about making sure that he holds his brakes in time before any more drivers come through and collect him. And in the end, I think smartly towing it back to pit lane, but not what you want so close towards the end of the race, especially considering that he's had such a good, consistent race up to this point, and running for some really good points for this championship challenge.
I gotta say, a lot of drivers having some really good shows as it stands at the moment. Thomas Rep, though, may be getting struck by a falling anvil. He's just dropped down the running order as we take a look at side-by-side racing in live action, and a spin in the replay, and big contact heading down into turn number 1. Christopher Rines in the 111 Porsche. We'll touch back on that in a couple of moments as we see Thurman and Trickett side-by-side through turn number 1. Trickett going to hold on for now on that top 5 spot, but it was probably a matter of millimeters between those two Porsches heading off into one.
Yeah, and Andrew Trickett holding firm for the time being, but Brett Thurman definitely wouldn't mind getting himself to the top 5 after his successes from last week. Of course, Tyler Graf not too far up the road either. There's definitely chances in the final 4 minutes of this race for all drivers concerned in the battle. The gap to Buck Hamilton has decreased to 1.4 seconds, but Buck is doing a good enough job to manage that and to try and keep himself onto the overall podium. Really, really impressive display. Buck Hamilton this evening, an AM driver who's been right at the sharp end of the overall battle all the way through the race, and despite the fact he's not necessarily been able to keep tabs with Ricardo Delgado and Matt Scherf over the last 20 minutes or so, still being able to keep himself more than ahead of the rest of the drivers in the order. And Tyler Graf and Andrew Trickett and Brett Thurman filing it out between them at the moment for P4. Let's see if they can chase down Buck Hamilton in the closing couple of laps. But down into the Le Mans chicane, we're not going to see a move being made there. And Brett Thurman will wait and bide his time and twiddle his thumbs for another opportunity.
I will say, though, something that's certainly helping out the cause of Trickett is the number 77 McLaren of Tyler Graf. You can see the damage on the front end of Trickett's race car. That front bumper is missing, and that's going to hurt you badly heading down the long flat-out blast around this racetrack. So that could be something that benefits Brett Thurman, using that straight-line disadvantage to allow the opportunity to get a move done heading down these long flat-out blasts. You need to get done with authority, though, as side-by-side heading off into one. Looks like Thurman going to back out of it for the time being, but he doesn't have much more time left to go in this race. Only about 2 laps left here, Dara, so these drivers really need to start thinking about getting these moves done and figuring out where to get these moves done.
Yeah, they've not got enough time to really twiddle their thumbs and wait now, do they? And that's not what Jay Steffi's doing. He's going for the move and getting it done effectively on Sully Saad through the International Horseshoe. The 2-4-7 is now up into P7. Sully Saad demoted to P8. David Bush III, of course, podium sitter last time out, trying to come through these two as they battle into the Western Horseshoe. Sully Saad resending it to the inside of Jay Steffi. He is not beating about the bush, not waiting around, and he's going to go for the move and not allow any kind of safety net for Jay Steffi. Through they come on towards the oval section once again. It's the outside line for Sully Saad, and it's not going to work out there. All of this battling allowing David Bush to get right involved in the battle now, but he's not quite close enough to make any kind of move in towards the Le Mans chicane.
Yeah, that's not a 2-car battle. This is now a 3-car battle. Look at David Bush in that number 32 car. We saw that full commitment heading down into the bus stop earlier on. Heading into the pits, though. Heading into the bus stop right now with the side-by-side battling. Looking at that, and Sully Saad getting that move done, the 79 car, but he's a little bit wiggly through that chicane. That's going to allow him to get absolutely torn to shreds. David Bush getting a move done on him. Herbert Pineda getting a move done on him as well. Sully Saad dropping down to 10th as a result of all that drama. The point I was going to raise that I completely flubbed up is the fact that David Bush in that number 32 Audi, we saw that commitment coming into the pits earlier on into this race. So heading into some of the braking zones around this racetrack, I expect the same level send. But look at Herbert Pineda in that number 99 car. Maybe gotta go for the 2-for-1 deal heading off into turn 1. Will it stick? And will he get that move done? You got a little bit of lap traffic to contend with as well. Look at that, hopping up into the air. That's Brett Thurman, actually, not lap traffic. That is for position, but look at that Thurman using the rally line coming out of turn 1.
Yeah, and this is now the final lap of the race here at Daytona. White flag has been flying, and just in the background of the shot there, you could see our race leader, Ricardo Delgado, about to make his way onto the oval section of the lap, being a really impressive display from him. Oh, with Sully Saad, David Bush and Brett Thurman, they're fighting over P8 still. They're swapping positions like there's no tomorrow. Brett Thurman's going down the order, the championship leader, tumbling down the field. He may have been able to recover it somewhat, but there he is off the road at the Western Horseshoe. There must have been contact, or there may have been contact in his battle with Sully Saad and David Bush, but as it is, he will stay inside the top 14 for now. Let's see if he can limp home towards the checkered flag, in towards the Le Mans chicane for Ricardo Delgado. Finished P2 last week, so close to the win, but it looks like it's going to be his opening win of the 2025 and his opening PRL win of his career in the number 3 car. All he has to do is use the fuel that he's got left in the tank, run it all the way around this oval part of the lap. Matt Scherf has run him close, but not quite close enough to have a move into the final lap. And it will be Ricardo Delgado. He's flashing the lights. He's going to be taking the championship lead as we work in towards round 3 next week. Delgado, your winner in the GT3 Fixed Series for round 2 of 2025, with Matt Scherf with a very solid result to finish in P2. Buck Hamilton will finish in 3rd, the number 57 AM driver overall on the podium. An incredible display from him. Will be absolutely delighted, I'm sure, with that result, and almost certainly will take the championship lead. I cannot tell you what is going on with the timing tower. There are drivers up and down the field. Let's hope there hasn't been too much contact. Brett Thurman has dropped down the order to P16, as we did see before, but let's hope there wasn't too much contact, because that did look a little bit manic at the end there, didn't it, Ron?
Yeah, it was a very hectic end to this race, but it was a brilliantly close battle all throughout this race, up and down the grid for that matter. Had battles for the win, had battles for the top 5, had battles for the overall podium. A brilliant race, but Ricardo Delgado going to be tasting the champagne.
Will be him at the top step of the podium in victory lane in his Chevy. What a great result for him in the number 3. He is our winner after 20 laps here at Daytona. Matt Scherf with P2 after a very solid display. Buck Hamilton found himself in the top 3 in the AM class. Fantastic result. The 57 car, and something to build on, I am sure. Tyler Graf and Andrew Trickett finished 4th and 5th, with Jay Steffi and Herbert Pineda, along with Sully Sad, in 6th, 7th and 8th. The AM podium was rounded out by Dave Jensen and Luke Davis, as they finished only a 10th apart in 9th and 10th overall. Dale Pedersen was P11 ahead of Colin McKenzie after his great drive through the field. Pete Messier and David Bush the third rounded out our top 14, with Bush definitely dropping down the order in the closing seconds. Joel Peguero and Brett Thurman 15th and 16th come the checkered flag. Jared Deploy, Sean Mulholland, Richard Saavedra and Thomas Rep, the top 20 drivers in the end. Ian Southern and Dave Peterson, Aaron Sunday, Jason Park and Alexandra Potvin were our top 25, with an absolute patchwork of pros and AMs. There, Drew DeVess, after starting right at the back of the field, P48, managed to recover to P26, and a fantastic result for him. Evander Jonesy Field was P27 ahead of Ian Cabana, Nico Sanidakis and Christopher Rhines, the top 30 in the end. Neil Alexander, Mark Bray and Raycon Chandler, the top 33, finished within a minute. Mulder Walton and Sean Duhamel, the top 35, finished on the lead lap. Jakob Fichtner and Sean Murphy were a lap down, though. Seth Godier, Sam Smeltzer and Ryan Chandler 2 and 3 laps down inside the top 40. As we roll on to see some of the drivers who had some more struggles in the race. Kevin Bergqvist, 41st, I should say. Luis Ortiz after his spin, 42nd, and David Mawson, 43rd. Scott Jeffries, Nick Bruno, Ross Sortino, Andrew Venaro, and Felix Felice, the 48 drivers that we had in the field this evening. And I'm delighted to say that off the back of that result, we can talk to our race winner, Ricardo Delgado. He joins us now. Ricardo, welcome and congratulations on that win. Pit strategy done to perfection. Tell us how you did in that race and how the pit strategy came about.
Yeah, it was definitely a fuel strategy and a fuel race. I did cut the pole with a great tow from someone else. Managed to get that, but was eager to let someone go by me, so I could start saving some fuel. And Matt did that, and I just stayed behind him. I think he got a slow lap or black flag on one of the laps, but I started lifting, so he clears it and stayed behind him. But yeah, it was definitely a strategy race today.
And yeah, strategized to perfection by you, of course. Looking forward to the rest of the season. You're now the championship leader, the target very firmly on your back. Are you ready to try and take on that mantle at Jerez next week?
Sure. We'll give it a go and see how it goes.
Good stuff, Ricardo. Well, congratulations on the win. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you again next week. But for the time being, I hope you really enjoy this win, because it's been a fantastic evening for you, and hopefully we'll speak to you next week.
Yeah, man. Thanks to all, and thanks to Sim Racing PR, my team, always giving me support.
As always, thanks, Ricardo, for that. And great to be able to speak to our race winner, P2 man in the end, was Matt Scherf. Matt, welcome in. A difficult race for you in terms of trying to get to the win, but really consistent in terms of the pace. What are the positives you can take from that?
Thanks, guys. Yeah, pace was pretty good, surprisingly. I was terrible all week with the McLaren. I felt like I had a parachute tied behind me, but it was pretty good. I had a good strategy. I was going to try and get him on the last lap, and I messed up the bus stop with 2 to go and got a slowdown, and it killed me. But great racing by Ricardo, though.
You, of course, moving up in the championship, I think you're going to be top. I mean, very basic maths, and I have no confirmation on this, but I think you may even be moving up into the top 3 in the championship, at least into the top 5. Does this give you a kind of confidence boost going into Jerez next week? Looking forward to seeing what you could do there?
Yeah, definitely. I feel pretty good there. I ran a couple races already. Got a good pace, so hopefully we can keep this momentum rolling to the next one.
Yeah, good stuff, Matt. Congratulations on P2. Good luck for any plans you may have for the 24 this weekend. We hope to speak to you next week.
Thanks. Can I give a quick shout out to a couple people?
Of course you can.
I'd like to thank Hyperion for all their help, all the Lunatic Boys for all their help, HRS, and V-Throttle Simulators, and John Wargo YouTube. Thanks, everybody, for all the support. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Congratulations again, and hopefully we'll see you on the podium next week.
Appreciate it.
To hear from our P2 man in the end, Matt Scherf. And now, finally, P3 man overall. It was the winner in the AM class, Buck Hamilton. Welcome in. Congratulations. You must be absolutely delighted with that. Fantastic for you in the championship.
Yes, that's right. Big surprise. Very fortunate today. Right place, right time in the qualifying, and kept it clean enough to finish.
I mean, front row of the grid in qualifying. That was an incredible lap time from you.
Yeah, towards the end, I got that. I was fortunate. I got a perfect draft on my last lap, and I didn't think it got me to second place. I was thinking top 10, but when I saw second, I was taken back. I was like, oh boy.
But great for you again in the championship. You'll be in the championship lead going forward to Jerez next week. Is that a circuit you're looking forward to?
Yes, I know it's familiar. I can't remember it offhand, but you know, the SGE guys will be practicing and hopefully hone in a good rhythm so that we can be competitive.
Sounds good, Buck. Well, congratulations on the win here this evening. All the best for next week, and hopefully we'll get to speak to you again in 7 days' time.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Buck. A delight, as always, to speak to our top 3, but that is where we will leave it here for the GT3 Fixed Series. Don't go too far, though, because we've got the GT3 Sprint Series coming up in just a moment's time. See you on the other side. Then for the second part of your Tuesday night GT3 PRL installment, this time for the Sprint Series. 40 minutes worth of racing with drivers able to tinker around a little bit more with the setups, I should say, across there, or with everything at their disposal. Myself, Darren Thacker, Ron Warnes up in the commentary box with you for this 40-minute race. We've got Ramiro and Agustin Pinheiro still up in the broadcast booth, making it look wonderful for us this evening. Ron, being able to tinker around with your setup a bit, how does that change how the drivers can see a race?
Oh, it can change a lot, especially around a racetrack like this. The Daytona road course is one of those circuits where you want to feel a bit more confident in the way your race car is driving through the corners and down those massively long flat-out blasts that litter this racetrack. That's going to make one heck of a difference come time for the end of this race. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to it as well. And this is where we can see the standings after the opening round at Long Beach. Is Kevin Denoyer, who leads the way, 56 points. He's got a bit of a gap back to Nick Ledecky and Juan Lemu, our top 3. Christian Steenberg and Elliot Budzinski rounded out our top 5 with Guillaume Levesque, Ubaldo Diaz, Chris Beats, Matt Stantoniuk, Miguel Angel Fonseca inside our top 10. Over in the AM category, Blake Ziti had a fantastic race, pretty much led the AM category from start to finish, and he has a 4-point margin ahead of Mark Elliott. Devin Brock was third ahead of Dino Vela and Marshall Scare inside the top 5. Jermaine Warren and Kevin Keenitz inside the top 7 with Justin Welsh, Gavin Ammerman and Adam Henwood, the top 10 drivers coming into this race in the championship. Over in the teams, it's Team PGZ who leads the way with just over 100 points. Only 6 points of an advantage though over Phil Dinez Racing after their good start to the season. Vimo Racing Team Mexico GP, a third ahead of SimCity Racing and Solpec Precision Racing Blue inside our top 5. SRTE Apex Racing Team, ex-ADB Motorsports, SRC, Solpec Precision Racing Gold and SimCity Racing are all inside our top 10 in the team standings. And with all the formalities done, it means that we can jump into some of the qualifying action. 3 minutes left to go in the session, and really important stage of the qualifying session to get your lap times in now, because you've not really got too much time to make too many mistakes now, do you?
Yeah, gotta make hay while the sun is still shining, and make sure you get some good, clean, and very fast lap times on the board. Want to be in that comfort zone. We saw in that fixed race earlier on this evening there, the fact that the pole sitter was able to get that pole time because of a pretty significant drive. So these racers looking to find that sweet zone between not picking up too much dirty air through some of the infield tight and twisties or through the Le Mans chicane, but you also want to have that advantage of having that whole punch in the air and being in that nice cushy envelope so you can just bend the floor pan in your race car and get the maximum amount of speed that you possibly can. These race cars and these race car drivers looking to find any way in the book to try and grab the pole, as we got a little bit of a Groundhog Day thing going on with 3 very similar looking race cars all running in a line.
Yeah, I think this is the team, the Mexico GP team running together, as we see Miguel Angel Fonseca running at the rear of it, maybe trying to give each other a tow, alternating, gets that advantage, but we'll see where these guys can jump up to in the order. Fonseca inside the top 10 in the championship, and there he is. I remember his heart rate monitor from last week, and he's got it back on for this week. Great to see from him and the Vima team. We'll see what they can do, but it's currently down the order in P37. Always nice to have a little bit of musical instrumentation in the back. So he's got also realising he's got a small trampoline. Not exactly what you'd imagine to see in a room that you're sim racing. You know, your sim rig, a small trampoline and a guitar. But hey, whatever floats your boat, whatever works for you. And for Miguel Angel Fonseca, it absolutely does. We'll see what he can do. They fly through the Le Mans chicane, but they're going to have to get it done pretty soon because there's not much time left on the clock here, Ron.
And not a whole lot of time left on the clock at all. Less than a minute now in this qualifying session, just to tie the bow around the storyline of Miguel in that number 413 car with that trampoline in the back of shot. If he does very well in this qualifying session or in the race we have coming up, he has the perfect opportunity to jump up and down with joy. I'll see myself out.
Yeah, I think I can do without you for the next hour or so, Ron. Thanks for that. That was really kind of my level, and that's not a good level to be at at all. Mark Elliott coming around to try and get to the checkered flag with a good lap time. Currently down in P44 overall in the 8.23. Wouldn't mind gaining another few positions. He's got a green screen. I can't imagine he's painted his wall with that detail for the team, but hey, looks fantastic either way. And Elliott across the line, 45.5 from him, and does that jump him up the order? Not too sure that he will, and he will stay down in P44 for the time being. But Kevin Denoyer looks like he's going to carry on his good form from last week. Won the race at Long Beach. He's almost certainly going to get pole here at Daytona. He may even be able to improve on his lap time from a 43.3, but Guillaume Levesque and Christian Steenberg are running him close. Less than a blink of an eye between the top 3 as they run their way across the line. And for Levesque, as he finalises his session, there is no ability for him to get to the front of the field. But some really competitive lap times, exactly what we want to see, Ron.
Yeah, very competitive lap times, and the front row separated by practically nothing. That is less than a half a tenth between those two race cars in this qualifying session. I can't even imagine come time for the end of this race. What we're going to see at the end of this, what are we going to see is the real question. We going to see a photo finish, or we going to see a hard-fought battle coming to the checkered flag? Who knows? All I know for sure is that I'm really looking forward to what this race is going to have in store for us. A little bit longer than the fixed race we had earlier on, and you do have to worry about those pit stops as well. These drivers still worrying about qualifying. A few more cars left out there on the racetrack, getting some last minute opportunities to set some times on the board, but it looks like Denoyer in that number 5 gonna be setting the pole at a 143.322. That's a pretty good lap time, but it's practically nothing between himself and the rest of the drivers in the top 3.
Yeah, and it's going to be a very interesting race between those three at the front, it seems, already. We did see Aiden Young popping it up into P13 with a 427, of course. 3-time back-to-back champion in the GT4 series on a Monday night here in the PRL. Won last night here at Daytona on RaceSpotTV, and he's in a GT3. Always good to see Aiden in for a race, and we'll see how he can do in the starting phase of the 40 minutes. But we're going to get to the grid very shortly, and this is how they're going to line up. Kevin Denoyer, championship leader, is going to start from the front of the field, trying to stamp his authority on the championship. Has one win overall in the PRL, and that was last week, trying to make it 2 from 2 in 2025. Guillaume Levesque is in P2, and Christian Steenberg running out of top 3, split by just half a tenth of a second. Antoine Lecharité is running out row number 2 with Elliot Basinski and Jayden Conrad on row number 3. The Fildenez Racing duo, I'm sure, are going to be working together from 5th and from 6th. We roll on to see Corbin Lenaway in 7th and Nicolas Lopez Gonzalez, the first of the Vima Racing Team cars in P8. Marc-Andre Garon and Juan Lemieux are in the top 10 with Chris Beats and Simon Theriot inside the top 12. Of course, Theriot, one of the top drivers off the back of last season. We'll see what he can do from the top 12. Aiden Young, GT4 specialist, it's fair to say, going nicely in the GT3s, P13 for him, with Ethan Bass inside the top 14 as well. Ryan Puchtel and Kevin Simpson inside the top 16 with Ubaldo Diaz and Steve Baker starting on row number 9. The top 20 is rounded up by Emmett Lindfist and Chris Stewart, with Matthew Biseglia and Uthman Alawai just outside the top 20, but they'll be looking to get inside, I'm sure, towards the start of the race. David Mendonca and Alex de Almeida in 23rd and 24th, as the top 25 will be rounded out by Peter Nodwell. Alex Carver joins him on row number 13 with Gonzalo Cortez and Matt Stadniuk on row 14. Nick Ledecky, of course, after the podium last week, will only start 29th, with Jason Allen alongside him inside the top 30. Nicholas Mazza and Sean Carmody, the top 32, with Miguel Angel Fonseca, Max Detilly, Noah Anderson and William Penson on rows 17 and rows 18. We keep on going to see our leader in the AM class, and that'll be Devin Brock in P37. He will be a long way down the field, but still points to be won for him. Daniel Haynes, Jermaine Warren and Joshua Spears inside the top 40. Kevin Kienitz and AM Championship leader Blake Seaty will start on row 21. Final row of the grid, Gavin Ammerman and Mark Elliott, 43rd and 44th. Still a very busy grid here at Daytona. So many cars littering the circuit here at one of the pantheons of racing, particularly North America, but around the world as well. And as we get on towards the action here for the 40 minutes of the Sprint Series, I think we can start to really get an idea of how well some of these drivers are going to be racing here on, because setups are going to be so crucial here. Whether you want to put a little bit more straight line speed on the car, whether you want to focus on the infield a little bit more, is going to be crucial. And it's going to be interesting to see which way some of the drivers have gone on that front.
Yeah, that's a very good point that he raised there, Dara. Talking about the balance between a high downforce setup to make you a bit more comfortable through the corners, which are still important around this track, whether or not you basically rip the rear wing off and have your car turn into a rocket ship heading down the long, flat-out blast around this racetrack. It's that yin and yang effect as well, and you really need to get that balance right, especially come time for the end of the lap. You want to carry a whole lot of speed heading through the Le Mans chicane, because otherwise, if you're basically basically stopped coming out of there. Doesn't matter how little downforce you have in the race car. Come time for turn number 1, you're going to get chewed up and spat at by your competitors. So that small little balancing act is such a good virtue of these sprint races, having these drivers cook up their own setups or having their teams kind of have the same setups. Either way, it's a nice little dynamic. I always love open setup races for the simple sake that it allows these drivers to be a bit more technical and methodical about the way they tackle their certain setups, the way they tackle their race cars, and also gives them a bit of an excuse to have a lot more practice time just as trying to hone that setup as best as they can.
And I think that's what they will have been doing over the course of the last week, getting their setups dialed in perfectly, of course. Preparations for their 24 hours coming up at the weekend will also be in full swing, as we see the fun of the fair here at Daytona Beach. Almost like an Italian fair there on the left-hand side, but hey, it's just me seeing things, I am sure. Lovely visuals, of course, here at Daytona. Really is a fantastic pole, particularly across the start-finish line. The views that you can get from the top of those stands really are sublime. And you can see some of these fantastic racing cars going at it in all of their glory. And this is what Kevin Denoise was able to put together to get himself on pole position here for the second round of the season in the number 5.
Riding on board with him throughout this lap, heading down into the International Horseshoe, trying to hit that apex and swing out wide. The exit of the horseshoe, the first horseshoe around this lap, oh so difficult. You want to hit that curb on the outside, but you don't want to hit too badly, because if you look at that curb and it doesn't like the cut of your jib, it's just going to send you off the racetrack in a cloud of dust, smoke, and a little bit of tears. But thankfully, he was able to manage that flawlessly coming out of turn number 6, the second horseshoe. This, though, I mentioned it earlier on in the broadcast, turn number 7, a really tricky corner just from my experience and seeing these racers take varied lines coming out of it. That may be the smart call. Decide to be a bit less tight on exit, run out a little bit wide, carry that speed, and also have a slightly less abrupt transition from the apron onto the high banks, heading through oval turn 1 and 2, onto the super stretch as they used to call it. Nowadays, we'll just call it the back straightaway, off into the Le Mans chicane, which I still prefer the bus stop chicane name, but nevertheless, these racers very happy that iRacing doesn't have those killer anti-cut curbs that Daytona put on here a couple of years ago. Here's an interesting line from Denoyer in the number 5 car, maybe looking at the cars a little bit farther up the road and trying to get a bit of draft off them. It is a pretty big amount of distance between himself and the cars farther up the road, running up towards the barrier. If we see a driver pick up a slowdown, you'll usually see them running towards the barrier, but then cutting back down into the tri-oval right by the apron to complete a wonderful ride around Daytona and a brilliant lap to put him on the pole.
And we'll see what he can do from there to hopefully, for his, well, in his eyes, make it 2 wins from 2 to start the season. 2 wins overall in his PRL career. There's the temperature, 68 ambient, 69 Fahrenheit on the circuit, and of course with me completely understanding what those mean. That means to me that's pretty much room temperature, isn't it, outside for the drivers. 93% humidity, so a pretty warm day and a bit of a blustery day as well. 12-mile-an-hour winds on the flat panhandle of Florida, of course. 1st of March, getting into the evening. Of course, I think it'd probably be dark at this time of the day if it was the 14th of January, but as it is, we're into March. We're going to get a nice sunset feel to this race and 40 minutes worth of PRL GT3 sprint action to get our teeth into. More than a fair share of cars to keep us excited with as well, Ron.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that's going to keep us and these drivers on their toes. Looking through that weather report, though, 92% humidity. I mean, I have talked about my brief experience in Florida, have some relatives down there, and have it be known that the air in Florida throughout about 80% of the year is basically like you're walking around in a bowl of soup. It's that humid out there. The air is so thick. So these racers certainly feeling not feeling the burn temperature-wise, but feeling the humidity. It's like they're going to be in a room temperature sauna, for lack of a better term. But these racers looking to bring us some heat on the racetrack. Got a stacked field of race cars and a lot of drivers looking to contend for some wins and try and build up their trophy cabinet to kick this season off. You know, obviously you want to take the first checkered flag of the season, but that first checkered flag means just as much as the second one. So these racers looking to get some more wins. And as you can see, the field packing up. It's going to be a brilliant run and a hectic run and a terrifying run for these drivers heading off into turn number 1. Turn 1 at the beginning of a race like this, especially if you're in the mid-pack, very good that we're in the commentary booth instead of behind the wheel, Dara, because I feel like our blood pressure is probably a bit lower than these racers are.
Yeah, these races are going to get ready though. 40 minutes worth of racing to get us much more into the Daytona spirit here in the PRL, and we are racing underway. It's a great stuff from Kevin Denoyers right at the front of the field as he will try and get a good launch towards the opening turn. It'll be Christian Steenberg and Guillaume Levesque following him through, with Levesque losing out on his P2 in the opening corner. 4th, 5th and 6th is a heated battle with Le Charité leading Budzinski and Conrad, the two Phil Dinez racing teammates, are fighting it out side by side in towards the International Horseshoe. They single file their way out at the front though as they make their way through one of the most important overtaking spots of the lap for the first time. A little bit of bumping towards the mid-pack and towards the rear of the field, but right at the sharp end it's going to be Denoyers from Steenberg from Levesque 1, 2 and 3. Let's see if they can pull away or whether the rest of the train can keep up.
Oh, and you can see a car going off the track heading down into the second horseshoe. How in the world do they keep that car under them? You can see that Acura was incredibly squirrely heading off into turn number 6. I am not sure how in the world. I believe that was Juan Lemieux in the number 86 car was able to keep that car going in a straight line, because that was terrifying. Heading off into turn number 6, went a little bit wide through 5, went into the dirt, but somehow kept that race car under him.
Yeah, how much teamwork are we going to be seeing between Denoyers and Steenberg in the early stages of this race, maybe trying to help themselves pull away from the rest of the pack as they fight their way through the Le Mans chicane for the first time in anger in this race. Guillaume Levesque not giving them too much room though in the 991. Antoine Le Charité staying nice and tight to this battle as well. Getting wide, high and wide that is in P7. That's Corbin Lenaway in the 161, getting a long way off the racing line. Maybe that's an intentional racing line, but not normally one that we see here at Daytona. Regardless, the top 3 will flash across the line, less than 2/10 to split them. And let's hope that that's a bit of a running theme throughout this race, because if we can see tight battling like this all the way through, I think we're going to be in for a treat.
That we absolutely will. The battling that we're going to be seeing all throughout today is like having a nice popsicle after a day out in the sun. It's going to be sweet. It's going to hit the spot, and these racers are going to have us talking about this for weeks to come. This is going to be a brilliant second race to this season. These drivers already battling up and down the field. I think we may have had a swap-a-roo between Diaz and Simon Terrio a little bit farther down outside of the top 10 as the racing continues all throughout this grid. Look at some side-by-side and near contact heading off into the second horseshoe. Looks like no harm, no foul. These racers making it through the first lap very clean. Saw a couple of incidents here and there, but outside of that, these drivers squeaky clean at the start of this race.
Yeah, really impressive to see from a lot of these guys early on in the race, and we will see how they can almost adapt to the racing conditions that we're going to be finding ourselves in the pretty near future. A couple of good moves up towards the front of the field. Ed Young being one of those drivers from P13 to P8 after a lap and a half in this race. He's going to be trying to chase down Chris Beats to keep himself somewhat in the train. Jaden Conwright has a gap back to Chris Beats, though that could be an important break in the train as we get ourselves into a bit of a rhythm in this race. And you can see that gap between Le Charité and Budzinski for the time being extending a little bit further, I think, than Budzinski in the 91 would enjoy seeing. And you've got to be careful, because if you lose the draft here at Daytona, you can lose it, and the time loss to the drivers around you could then be exponential.
Ooh, and you can see, look at that, trying to get a move done down into turn number 1. Levesque trying to get done on Steenberg, and it's going to be successful. Steenberg dropping down to 3rd. Levesque, that was really gutsy heading off into turn number 1. Look at the stamp and going for the dive as another attempted overtake. Steenberg dropping down like a rock over the past few corners.
And not looking good for Christian Steenberg in those couple of moments. Lecharite coming through, but he's going to find it out as they run their way in towards the western horseshoe. Lecharite will have to have the inside line, which he will, and he'll be able to control that and still keep himself inside the top 3 and nice and close to the top 2 as well. That he will be firmly in the draft as they make their way on towards the oval once again. Budzinski and Conright still going to be involved in this battle as well, as they've tightened up to the back of the train a little bit, as we can get a replay of the start. Couple of drivers, including Fonseca, getting almost distracted, misjudging the start, and that's why we saw the 413 dipping down below the apron even before we really got going.
Yeah, thankfully, though, it didn't result in a field clearing pileup, because any sort of contact heading into the tri-oval usually going to end in disaster, but thankfully they got away with it rather scot-free. Still not ideal to have your race begin on that foot, but again, we still got 40 minutes of racing action from the start. 35 left on the clock as it stands at the moment. I've already seen a lot of drama go on, some drivers going for some gutsy moves up and down this grid, and hey, we're just now hitting the point in which the fixed race earlier on began, so these sprint drivers have a bit more time in their back pocket to try and get some moves done and battle hard for positions, as we're not going to see side-by-side racing up the front. Denoyer holding on to the lead for now, keyword being for now.
Yeah, how long will that last? Because even if Denoyer is in the lead, it doesn't necessarily feel like it is the most convincing for the time being. It almost feels like Levesque could have gone for a move somewhere if he wanted to, but he's holding back, he's waiting, he's being reserved. We will see at some point for him to make the move. It's just a case of where and when. Is he going to try and overtake Denoyer for the lead of the race? Number 76 of Biseglia, what's happened to him? Oh, massive into the wall hard, that front left is going to be looking a little bit worse for wear, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see him tow back to the pit lane from that. And that was a hefty hit for the front left.
Yeah, that was a sizable impact into the Armco barrier. Very lucky that we aren't running in real life, because I'm pretty sure that would have been a gap in the barrier. So still, either way, not going to be ideal at all. Some major damage on the front end of that race car. Going to take him out of contention. These two, though, that we're following on screen at the present moment, still very much in contention. Denoyer and Levesque still very close, about a 10th and a half separating the two of them, heading off through the Le Mans chicane right now, as we see Jermaine Warren having a moment, coming out, swerving around the racetrack, and don't just make a new word there, I think I might have, but going for a spin, coming out of the Le Mans chicane. Certainly not ideal, as the tires on that Mustang have been reduced down to the canvas.
Yeah, not good at all. We'll see what happens in terms of that strategy from this point, but still a lot to think about with 33 minutes left. Jason Allen, going for a spin, and a couple of other drivers almost spinning in sympathy, just trying to get out of the way. For Allen, that's an awful place to get to put yourself on the circuit, and smartly spinning himself back around, getting off the racing line as well in doing so. So good work there from Jason Allen, as he will rejoin the field. Still the top 4 run, nose to tail. You could throw a blanket over all 4 of them. Christian Steenberg running up the rear, less than a second off the lead. This looks like it's going to be an absolutely titanic battle in this race. Hopefully it can continue right towards the end.
I have a pretty good feeling about this battle still being intense all the way to the checkered flag, at least all the way until these drivers make that run to come into the pits. We saw a pretty big pack in that fixed race earlier on get split up a teeny tiny bit. Because of the pit strategy, I expect round about the similar thing to happen here in this sprint race. These racers gonna maybe already think about how they're going to execute the pit strategies, because we saw it at Long Beach, we saw it earlier on with the fixed race here at Daytona. It's oh so important to nail that strategy. If you get it right, you're gonna be smelling like a bed of roses. If you get it wrong, though, you're gonna be smelling like an outhouse. These racers hoping to smell like a nice perfume instead of anything else with that run through the pits.
Little line on Aiden Young, of course, known a little bit more in the PRL for his GT4 pace. Of course, 20 wins in the PRL, all of them coming in a GT4. He has 29 top 5s in a GT4, although he has a little bit more than that overall. He has 42 top 5s overall, which means he's got 13 non-GT4 top 5s, but no non-GT4 win. Let's see if that changes this evening. Him being 4.3 seconds off of the lead. The lead being Kevin Denoyer's still for the time being, is Guillaume Levesque It's going to leave him alone yet again as they make their way through turn 1. It very much feels like Levesque is happy to almost work together with the Noyers, maybe Le Charité and Steenberg as well, to just keep this trainer for, or keep this trainer for isolated from the rest of the field, because the less drives that are involved in the lead battle, the more likely it's going to be for the likes of Levesque and Le Charité to come away with a win here.
And I will touch back on a point you mentioned a couple of moments ago here, Dara, talking about Aiden Young. He's off the back of a win yesterday here in the PRL and the GT4. So if anyone outside the top 5 is maybe going to challenge these 4 that we have on screen at the moment, it may end up being a driver like Aiden Young. Only time will tell, but at the front of the field, these racers may be settling into a groove at this point in time. Haven't seen a swaparoo between Denoyer or Levesque. Haven't seen a swaparoo between Le Charité and Levesque either. Christian Steenberg still dropping down to 4th, 1 spot lost from where he started in this race. Was running in P2 not terribly long ago. However, that Apex Racing Team 991 car of Levesque certainly cutting his way through the field at the time. As it stands, Man, I'm all over the place here. As it stands, 1/4 of the way into this 40-minute long race, 10 minutes already on the clock. These drivers may be settling down a little bit at the north end of the field.
It definitely feels like these guys right at the sharp end are starting to feel like they're okay to settle into a rhythm, okay to stay where they are for the time being. With Christian Steenberg, of course, losing out a couple of spots a few laps ago to go from 2nd to 4th, still happy to stay with this lead train. Again, you can see how close Levesque is getting, almost a bump drafting Denoyer down into turn 1. And Steenberg, with the fastest lap of the race last time around in P4, really shows how much these guys are working together, because they're not going for moves despite the pace being absolutely monumental. Elliot Brzezinski dropping off the back of this train, the gap now being 2.4 seconds, and the Phil Denez Racing duo of Brzezinski and Conright do risk falling into the back of Aiden Young, who does have 3 top 5s in the GT3s to his name. He's looking for a 4th, I'm sure, if he can get past both the Phil Denez Racing cars.
And that will be a snowball effect if you see the cars of Budzinski and Conright fall back to Aiden Young, because you only have to go back about 0.4 of a second from Young to find Chris Beats in the 33 car, and then only 0.3 behind then you find Juan Lemieux in the number 86. So that field is very, very close as it stands currently. So Budzinski and Conright, the last thing they should be doing at this point in time is start to battle for position. Otherwise, they're going to find themselves in a lot, and I do mean a lot, of trouble.
Yeah, 4 top 5s apiece for both Budzinski and for Conright coming into this race. So at the moment, they're going to have a little bit of battle to see who can get their 5th top 5 in GT3s in the PRL. Of course, great records for them, particularly over the last couple of seasons, right at the sharp end, a lot towards the back end of 2024, and they're back up there again. No surprise to kick off 2025 to see them where they are. 28 minutes still on the clock, and still a lot to decide. I think we're going to have to wait until the final 5 laps to really see this battle between Denoyer, Levesque, Le Charité and Steenberg to really kick into full flow. Of course, Steenberg will be the driver who'll want to get a move on first, being at the back of the queue if he wants to get to the front of the queue. But he's happy for the time being to stay where he is and just extend that margin to Elliot Brzezinski. It's getting further and further out every passing lap, now up to 2.7, as it's really epitomised by the last lap that they set. A 44.2 for Steenberg, a 44.6 for Brzezinski, and they're coming under pressure from Aiden Young, who was 0.8 faster than Brzezinski and Conright on the last lap.
And as we talk about that, we go back to this absolute hornet's nest of race cars heading down into the second horseshoe. This is just outside of the top 30. Danielle Haynes currently running in 31st in the number 41 car, the Californian, in that McLaren. Let's see if you'll try and get some moves done in the not too distant future. You've got the 111 car, the Corvette right in front of him. Just another car involved in this massive group of race cars. Looking through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Am I counting them right? 8 race cars covered by practically nothing. Did were the maths failing me there, Dara, or did you also see 8 race cars involved in that hornet's nest?
Yeah, it really is such a busy part of the circuit. So many cars on the circuit, and the field spread isn't huge. Top 12, or top 16, I should say, split by just over 12 seconds is really incredible to see. All of these cars run their way through, and mind you, that includes a gap of over 3 seconds now between 4th and 5th. So really, it's the from 5th to 16th, 12 cars covered by about 8 seconds. Absolutely incredible. Budzinski and Conright have been pretty much caught by Aiden Young, who has been on a charge in the last few laps. That's the fastest lap as well to boot. And as the two Fildenez cars work together, is it going to allow a little bit of a chance for Aiden Young to find his way through? Not quite. And Young will stay where he is. Chris Beats and Juan Lemove very much firmly in this battle, as well as there's a move in behind Ubaldo Diaz and Simon Theriault just about to come through the shot in the background, going side by side. And Simon Theriault, of course, teammate to Vincent Trepanier, eventual series winner last season, down in P11 for the time being. Let's see if he can get back inside the top 10. I'm sure he feels like that's where he should be.
Yeah, these drivers getting to the point of this race where they're trying to settle into a groove, but some more racers are trying to make hay while the sun is shining. And speaking of that, we're going to bring up the point that we raised in that fixed race earlier on there, talking about the change in time and the change in track conditions from the start to the finish. Of course, 5 more minutes in this race as we see that moment from Miguel. Oh my God, an airborne as well, heading through, very lucky to avoid major disaster, heading off into the Western Horseshoe. Very lucky that that didn't end in tears. Getting back to the point that I was going to mention in terms of the track evolution or revolution, I'm not sure the way to describe it, because this track feels like it will completely change on you from start to finish. Starting it off in the daytime and then running under the lights, you're going to have more marbles on the outside line. You're going to have some more tire build up all throughout this race. I can barely get my point across as we have a lot of incidents going on up and down this grid. But the start of this race and the track conditions at the start of this race going to be complete 9-day difference, no pun intended, from how it is at the end.
Yeah, and we'll see if drivers have set up their cars accordingly for that. Move for the lead, in fact. Guillaume Levesque, I think, has gone past Kevin Denoyer. He's finally given in, and after 15 minutes of the race, the 991 has overtaken the number 5 in towards the opening turn. So Denoyer moving away from the lead of the race for the first time in the sprint series in well over half an hour's worth of racing, of course leading the majority of Long Beach last week. And it's now Guillaume Levesque's turn to take over the mantle. Let's see how it happened. It'll be an easy inside line into turn 1. He could have made this move any number of times throughout the start of the race, but he's waited until now and effectively getting it done.
Yeah, just waiting for that right opportunity to get the move done in that 991 car. Waited for the shot, and then he just pounced on it. So well done to take the lead of this race. But we still got a lot of time left to go. Have to worry about those pit stops as well coming up in the not too distant future. Slowly but surely approaching that halfway mark. It feels like this race has absolutely flown by. Have had a whole lot of action thus far. Lots of drivers battling, some drivers having some incidents here and there. But at the front of the field, it has been a masterclass from all 4 of these racers. The real question is here, though, Dara, do you think we're going to have any more swaps in position between these 4 before those pit stops? Or do you think they're finally settling this race into a groove?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple of swaps of positions, because we've seen Levesque go past Denoyer, but at the same time, I can't imagine there's going to be too many hard-fought moves. Going to be pretty easy racing lines being taken, and you can see again a little bit of bump drafting ongoing between Guillaume Levesque and Kevin Denoyer. So Denoyer, I'm sure, not too fussed about sitting where he is. I mean, at the same time, Levesque may have even just said, you've done, I mean, unlikely for a racing driver to almost have a bit of a compromise without discussion, but maybe saying that, Kevin said the first 15 minutes, I'll maybe take on a little bit of the mantle, maybe use up a little bit of the fuel I was able to save in doing so, as we helped each other get away from the rest of the pack. Of course, they are joined by Le Charité and Steenberg, who are this top 4 definitely isolated now. 3.5 seconds the gap back to Elliot Budzinski, Conright, Young, Beats and Lemieux, that battle for P5. But Levesque taking on the mantle for the time being at least. We're approaching half distance now. I think we will wait a little bit longer, though, to see pit stops, with drivers trying to shorten off that stop time for as much as they can.
Yeah, these drivers trying to figure out the best way to run down pit lane. I've brought this up a lot, and how important it is to make sure that run through the pits is as seamless as it possibly can be, as seamless and as quick as it can possibly be. Don't want to have any strings attached at all, though. Don't want any sort of penalties. I'm a little bit surprised that we didn't see a notable example of a driver picking up either a pit lane speeding penalty or some sort of like unsafe exit penalty So hopefully I didn't just jinx these drivers that we're seeing in the sprint race, but this pit entry and exit around Daytona is notoriously difficult. It's caught out many drivers in the past. You got to have the full commitment, the full send. We saw from Billy Bush earlier on this broadcast during the fixed race, his absolute send and a half heading into the pit entry. But we also saw some drivers being a little bit more gingerly in their approach coming out of the pits.
Yeah, definitely going to be an important factor. Those little fine margins on pit lane can be the difference between winning the race and in this battle finishing 4th place, and that is going to be quite a change for some of these drivers, especially with potentially for a couple of these guys a maiden win in the PRL on the line. Not for Guillaume Levesque, he's got 15 PRL wins all time, looking for a 16th in his PRL career. Of course, Denoya, this time 7 days ago had 0. Got the win last week to get his maiden, looking for a 2nd in a row and his 2nd overall. For fellow Charité, it would be his 1st PRL win if he was to get to the front of the field in the 7-2-1. Half the race has now elapsed, half the race still to pass, and we've got 20 minutes to decide who is going to come out on top here for the 2nd round of the GT3 Sprint Series for Season 1 of 2025.
Yeah, these drivers looking to try and grab a checkered flag, whether it's going to be their first of this season, first of many, or whether it's going to be a one-off. These racers still want to be spraying some champagne in victory lane here at Daytona. So it's pretty awesome to try and have something like that. I'm sure these drivers are looking to find any way in the book to get past their competitors. Still got some time in their back pocket. Just ticked over the halfway mark a couple of moments ago. 40 seconds over that halfway mark to be a bit more precise. These racers giving us a really good fight. Even outside the front 4, we've got a nice fight that we're following right now. There's Elliot Budzinski in that number 91 car, currently tailed by his teammate of Jaden Conwright. As much as those two haven't been trading blows and going side by side a lot, it has still brought Aiden Young into that fight. And what did I say earlier on in this broadcast era about the fact that Aiden Young, he may be a sleeper pick as to doing well in this race? I don't think he's going to go for all-out glory and grab the victory unless there's some major chicanery that happens during the pit cycle. However, Aiden Young looking to be really impressive in that 427 car.
Yeah, he's got a little bit stuck, hasn't he, of late behind Budzinski and Jaden Conwright. He's going to be trying to pick a way through between those two, but with the 91 and the 888 being teammates, it's particularly difficult to find a way past Budzinski and Conwright for the time being. The slightly darker grey of Budzinski leading the slightly, is that a lighter grey, is that a white? Difficult to really tell in the dying light of the day, but either way, both Phil Denez racing cars working together nicely to control this 5-6 for the time being. They're on their way back out onto the oval. I did do a double check, and it would be a first win of their PRL careers for either Antoine Lecharité or Christian Steenberg, if either of them was to find themselves crossing the checkered flag first. Denoya has, of course, the 1 and Levesque the 15. So definitely the experience loaded towards the driver right at the front of the field, but everybody behind him, Denoya, Lecharité and Steenberg, they're fighting over some of their first tastes of PRL glory with 18 minutes on the clock. Pit stops are going to start to come into the minds of some of the drivers, though, as time will tick down. We've got all of, another 10, 11 laps of this race, so not too many more chances for drivers to come into the box.
Yeah, not a whole lot of time left for these racers, and trying to seize the opportunities while they still have it. That run through the pits, I've mentioned it a lot, being really, really difficult. But at this point in time, these drivers probably a bit more preoccupied about the battling going on the racetrack right now as these racers bump drafting, heading down the tri-oval. You got three, actually I was going to say 3 Acuras. I just realized that Aiden Young in that 427 car is in a Corvette, so may need to get my eyes checked after this broadcast. But you got 2 Acuras running in front of a Corvette, and then you've got a Porsche right behind them as well. Chris Beats and Juan Lemieux certainly involved in this battle, so those two currently being the tail cars of all of this, as I think they definitely had a really good lap from Mazda a couple of moments ago to jump his way up into the lead. That was a brief little timing error. We apologize for that. Must have kicked on the hyper, just probably sped up to about 14 times the speed of sound to jump into the lead. Yeah,
of course, we're not. It's fair. We're not a million miles away, are we, from the Kennedy Space Center, are we, here from Daytona Beach? So maybe he popped down there briefly to give himself an extra bit of a boost around the circuit. But that was just a brief moment that Nicolas Mazza was right at the top of the field. Wasn't there in reality, but either way, we'll see him in the pit lane, it seemed. We'll see what he can do from there. At the front of the field again, there's 16 minutes left to go. We're still really waiting for the fire to be lit in this battle. You know, all of the fuel is there, the oxygen is there, as is the heat of the battle. We're just waiting for that spark to get the fire started, and I think that'll happen after the pit stop phase, which we're not going to start just yet, as Levesque will go around. 15 minutes to go. They are leaving it slightly late in these this front running pack, I should say.
Yeah, they are cutting it a little bit close in terms of their run to come into pit lane, but nevertheless, these racers are still battling for all that glory. Diaz in the number 8 car making that run to come into the pits, currently slotted in 15th, make that all the way down outside the top 15. Now, Rudd, as I mentioned, that he drops down, but nevertheless, these racers are been preoccupied for the time being. The headlights are flicked on. You can see that glare from all of them heading their way through turn number 5. I gotta wonder, though, it's definitely going to happen in the next 10 minutes, but I'm curious as to whether or not it's going to happen within the next couple of laps. Those racers a little bit further towards the back and making that call to come into the pits. That's another thing to mention in terms of this race with the different setups these racers may be trying to run. That could affect their fuel mileage as well. If you got a car with a lot of downforce and ergo a lot of drag, you're going to get slightly less fuel mileage. If you're a driver like Levesque, who's been leading for a decent chunk of this race, even though you're in that slippery Corvette, you're going to be punching that hole in the air. So that's not going to be ideal at all in terms of your fuel mileage. So at this point in time, you got to start to think about how these drivers have managed this opening stint.
Yeah, and a long opening stint at that, 26 minutes and counting for it. We will see whether we see the likes of Levesque, Denoy, Lecharite and Steenberg into the pit lane this time around. They'll dive their way up towards the start-finish line, and we'll wait to see if Levesque is going to blink. The answer is no, and they will go out and run more time. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see pit stops under the 10-minute mark, as the two Phil Dinez racing cars are coming into the box. Oh, that looks like it's very much going to be a speeding in the pit lane, or at least a very, very, very late braking maneuver from Jaden Conrad. He may even lose out the position to Grit Beats in the pit lane.
Yeah, that is going to sting if that is a penalty, a pit lane penalty. That's a game ender for these drivers, and you want to avoid that at all costs. But sometimes just trying to save off tenths of your lap time, you can end up costing yourself about 25 seconds with a pit lane penalty. So fingers crossed that that will not result in any sort of steward's inquiry. But nevertheless, these racers are seeing some more of their adversaries come down pit lane, these front four, seeing the cars behind them come in, and look at that. That was incredibly deep. Not only did he nearly smack into that inside concrete barrier, that was definitely a pit lane speeding, and nearly making contact with a Porsche through the fast lane as well. So not a clean run through the pits for Conrad at all. I'm curious as to whether or not he's actually rejoined the racetrack, or whether or not iRacing is waiting to rub salt into the wounds to give him that very likely penalty.
Yeah, one of those pit lane speeding moments where it's almost so obvious that you don't want to call it, because it's almost like that surely can't have happened, but it did. And not particularly good for Jaden Conway. Let's see what will come of it for the Triple Eight driver. Either way, he's behind the likes of Juan Lemieux, who pitted in with him, and Lemieux has been able to jump, beat Brzezinski and Conway in the pit lane, and the 86 driver has done an absolutely stellar job on the pit stop phase.
Here we go.
Here comes Levesque and Denor and Lecharite and Steenberg, all of the front four into the pit lane, and they'll all get it stopped, I think, just about in time. But it is a bit of a melee as they make their way into their box. Will they all get it stopped in time? Let's see. You never want to have the little moments of reversing into the box. They're gonna, we're gonna just about see them from behind their tents, and here they come right to the front of the field by virtue of having the best qualifying positions, and they're up onto the marks.
And here we go. Let's see who's going to be the first to exit as we take a look at Mark Elliott running down in 34th at the present moment. I think Levesque may have gone out in front. Lecharite going to be slotted in P2. Denoyer dropping down to 3rd, and Steenberg still running in 4th. I think from what I saw, and I'm not sure if you can back me up on this, Dara, I think I saw Lecharite not up on the jacks. I think I saw that Audi flat on the tires, stopped in the pit stall. So that could be part of the reason why he's jumped up to P2. Either way, that's going to shuffle the dynamic duo that we saw running P1 and P2 earlier on this race. The duo of Kevin Denoyer in the 5 and Christian Steenberg in the number 77. They're now running in 3rd and 4th. Now, I'm curious as to whether or not they will be able to mount a challenge on the Corvette and the Audi running in front of them.
The overcut working well for Aiden Young as well. Last to pit in that battle for P5, and he's in P5 now by virtue of being able to get a slightly shorter pit stop and find himself ahead of the likes of Lemieux, Jaden Conrad, Chris Beast. Now can the driver with the fastest lap flex those pace muscles just a little bit and try and pull away from the rest. Struggling to get those tyres up to temperature, it seems, as he runs his way off of the corner. Maybe just struggling on the traction for the first time as he makes his way out of the pit lane, but he leads this battle for P5 now. We have two very clear battles, one for P1 with 4 drivers, and then one for P5 with 5 drivers. Nice almost synergy there to have a 4-car and a 5-car battle being very clearly stated with 10 minutes left of this race to go. Quick little look in there for Mark Elliott as he runs down in the mid-30s, but this race really is going to hot up. 10 minutes to go. It's going to come down to this.
Yeah, 10 minutes of racing action. Doesn't matter about the half an hour that's come before. These 10 minutes are going to be a bare-knuckle fist fight, these racers. Hoping not to scuff their knuckles too badly and hoping not to get knocked out by their competitors either. But let's see side-by-side racing heading off into turn number 1. Nearly not going to be close enough between Aiden Young and Juan Lemieux. Lemieux, who had that absolutely horrendously terrifying moment heading off into turn number 6 earlier on. He's put on a rousing recovery, running in 6th at the present moment, right behind Aiden Young. Young, a driver who I mentioned earlier on, had a really good shot of doing well in this race, and I wouldn't say that he's running in a race-winning position, but a P5 result is still pretty awesome, so sure he's not going to turn that down one bit. Giving himself a lot of confidence in terms of this week running at Daytona. Won in the GT4s yesterday here on RaceSpot, and looking pretty good for a solid top 10 spot here in the GT3s tonight. But you've got Juan Lemieux, you've got Jane Conroy, you also got Chris Beats and Elliot Budzinski involved in all of that. Gotta say the dynamic duo of Conroy and Budzinski actually broken up a little bit, as you've got Chris Beats in the number 33 car, splitting the difference between the two of them with a tick under a second separating those two race cars right towards the tail end and the middle of that 5-car fight. So some more storylines to carry in that battle for the final spots in the top 5.
Very much an interesting battle. I think we're going to have to keep an eye on both of these all the way to the end of the race. 8 minutes left on the clock as we tick our way down towards our checkered flag finale, and I think we're going to be able to see another 6 laps possibly remaining in this race. Touch and go whether we'll get 5 or 6, but regardless, not many, and I think Le Charretier knows that. He's going to be going for the move, but he's gone a little bit wide at turn 1, and it's as I mentioned earlier about drivers going for lines that may be differential to try and make the move, to make it work for them. It's not going to work out, and Le Charretier spinning around at the exit of turn 2 and 3 as well. He's going to take himself right out of the contention with that and drop himself to the back of the top 9, which is absolutely gutting for the 721. We're going to have to get a replay, I think, on board with either and both Charretier and Denoyer, because that really was an interesting moment. Denoyer slipped it up the inside, but it almost looked like Le Charretier dropped it on his own on the exit.
Charretier got some air as well when he ran wide coming at turn number 1. Hit the grass. That grass incredibly uneven. Have seen some drivers get some airborne activities heading through there in the past in my time covering iRacing events, and I think we may have seen it yet again a few moments ago. Le Charretier was running in 2nd. He's now running all the way down in 9th, hopelessly out of contention with a tick over 7 minutes left to go on the clock. I think there's a couple of replays that we're going to have to take a look at and all of that drama, but the 721 car having some aerial acrobatics coming out of turn number 1. Going to turn that 4-car battle for the win and the podium spots into a 3-car battle. Really can discount it to 2, as the gap between Kevin Denoyer and his teammate of Christian Steenberg has ballooned out a little bit. It's now about 0.8 of a second. Not saying that's insurmountable, but that's still a pretty significant margin, as we're going to take a look and see this moment involving these two heading off into turn 1. And there you can see the nudge, and there you go. There's the airborne activity I was talking about.
Yeah, it really is. Quite an impressive little train of cars, and I think it's going to start to get a little bit hotter. 6 minutes on the clock to go, and Juan Lemieux is not going to hang around for any longer on the back of Aiden Young, going for a top 4 now after Le Charité has dropped down the order. Nothing going on into turn 1 this time around. It's going to have to sit and wait and try and find another opportunity to find his way past. This is the view from Antoine Le Charité, with Denoyer coming up the inside. Oh, he got it a little bit out of shape. And then in his attempts to get back onto the circuit and keep himself into the battle, he bounced over the curb that is the exit curb of turn 1 and found himself spinning around. You could say that it was very aggressive from Kevin Denoyer. You could say that Le Charité left the door open either way. Le Charité spinning himself around in the end, and he will be gutted with that, I am sure. This is it on board with Denoyer, and the door firmly open there, Ron. I think many racing drivers will try and drive into a space like that.
Yeah, this may be a little bit of a controversial opinion to say, but I don't blame Denoyer one bit for going for that maneuver. I mean, he got it slowed down heading off into turn 1. That gap was there. He went for the gap. He got the move done, and it wasn't like he was going into that corner going 14 times the speed of Sen with no hope of even making it to the apex or even staying on this continent for that matter. He got that move done. It was rather successful, and I wouldn't say it was an overreaction. I think it was just some argy-bargy action as a result of that side-by-side racing that sent Le Charité off the track, but I don't think there's any blame to be thrown Kevin Denoyer's way. It was an aggressive move, don't get me wrong. It wasn't a move that you'd see, oh yeah, patient driver really going for one that's a move that is not going to end in tears. But either way, it's a move that he's going to try again to take the lead of the race.
Yeah, this is going to be Guillaume Levesque under a lot of pressure. Denoyer from 3rd to 2nd. Is he up to the lead once again? Is Christian Steenberg watching on with very much interest as they work their way in towards the international horseshoe. Bit of an up and under is on for Kevin Denoyer, but it's not going to work out for the number 5 this time around, and Guillaume Levesque will hold on to the lead for the time being. Time is ticking under 4 minutes here, as we have, I believe, 2 more laps at the conclusion of this one. So 2 more trips to turn 1 for these guys to settle it out between themselves. Denoyer outside line at the Western Horseshoe isn't going to work out, but he will continue on to the oval section, and we'll see what he can do from there. Max Detilly spinning around as he works his way onto the oval and getting collected as well. Not ideal for the 420, but those guys right the way down the order, not going to impact the big points paying positions. Biggest points paying position, P1 of course, still to be decided. Levesque, Denoyer, 2 laps to see who's going to come out on top, and you'd really be a brave man to put your chips on either.
That was absolutely the worst possible incident that you could have a couple of moments ago. I'm still kind of hung up on that. If you're one of these race cars stopped coming out of one of these corners and you see a massive pack of GT3 race cars approaching in your windscreen, it's going to be terrifying no matter what you do. But look at this side-by-side racing heading off into the bus stop. Nicolas Lopez Gonzalez and going for a spin off into the corner and bang into that outside tire barrier. He and the Mustang. Really aggressive racing between those two, but never mind that. Back up at the front with some side-by-side racing. Levesque trying to get the move done as Denoyer looking to fight for the win.
Now work their way down into turn 1, or through turn 1 once again, with Levesque still holding on to that advantage. Only one more trip down in towards the opening turn for Kevin Denoyer to try and get this one done, and we've seen how effective that overtaking opportunity is and how ineffective some of the others are. So I think Denoyer will be trying everything he can to get the best exit through the Le Mans chicane to set him up for a run towards the opening turn. That could be his final opportunity of the race. Christian Steenberg, though, he is there and he is more than ready to pick up the pieces, because if the front two come together, he is right on hand to storm through and take what would be a very unlikely win.
It's not like that number 77 McLaren is slow either. He has a 5th lap of the race at the moment in front of those two. So, I mean, despite the fact he's behind them for the time being, he seems to be in front of them pace-wise. So, if these two go off the track in a cloud of dust and steam in the final lap and a third of this 40-minute long race, Steenberg would be the one picking up the pieces. But look at that, Levesque weaving a little bit onto the back straightaway, trying to break that drift as best as he can. I think we have some lap traffic a little bit farther up the road. I'm not sure if that's going to play a difference in the end of this race, but Denoyer are going to try and save up that run. It was less than 2 0.2 of a second between them coming out of the Le Mans chicane. They're going to be taking the white flag this time by here, Dare. The real question is, of these drivers, which one's going to take the white, and will they be able to double it back and take the checkered in one lap time? But look at these two racers side by side, heading off into the tri-oval. Look at Levesque running him a little bit up the road. De Nooijer barely running up against the safer barrier side by side through the braking zone, off into turn number 1, the white flag in the air. Only one more lap of racing action and no more opportunities left into turn number 1. De Nooijer not able to make that move stick.
Yeah, and just going to have to sit and wait in behind turn number 1. He can't wait for much longer, though, because the opportunities are now thin and far between. I mean, apart from maybe sending it at the Le Mans chicane, I don't really see where else it's going to happen here for Kevin De Nooijer if he's going to try and take back-to-back wins to start his championship campaign. As it stands, he'll still be the championship leader on the run to round number 3 at Jerez next week, but it won't necessarily be as a back-to-back race winner. Guillaume Levesque didn't have the best of races last week, and he's a little bit further down the order, so it won't be too much of a concern right now for Kevin De Nooijer in a big championship picture scheme of things. But Levesque just trying to break that slipstream as they work their way out towards the Le Mans chicane. Nothing that De Nooijer can do for the time being. Christian Steenberg is in behind in this battle as well, but I think he's going to have to settle for what should be the bottom step of the podium. Just get it through nicely the Le Mans chicane for Guillaume Levesque. That's all he'll be thinking about, to get it to the checkered flag. The wide is out. The checkered will be pretty much in the hand of Barney up in the flag box as they work their way around the final corner. Levesque almost weaving. I wonder if that's almost losing himself a little bit of time there. As Kevin De Nooijer's got a bit of a run. He is closing. It's getting closer. The gap less than the blink of an eye. Is he going to be able to pull alongside? Is he able to pull ahead? Side by side to the line. De Nooijer, Levesque. Is it Levesque? Is it De Nooijer? Across the line in a photo finish. And by 1,000th of a second, or by nothing, by absolutely nothing, Guillaume Levesque is going to win the race. My word, there must have been the most photo finish we haven't really seen the likes of in the PRL. Kevin De Nooijer is just going to finish down in P2. We're going to have to see a replay of how close that was between the two of them, because it's going to come down to millimeters, Rod.
0.000. Holy cow. iRacing is giving it to Levesque according to our live timing tower, but how is this going to get decided? They tied. Holy cow, they tied. I had a feeling that if De Nooijer saved up a good enough run coming out of the Le Mans chicane, it was going to be his. I didn't think he would get it, though, because I saw that gap was a little bit bigger than it was the last time by. But De Nooijer had to have been bending the floor pan in that number 5 race car to make his way alongside him. But holy cow, Dara, that was just a bad... I mean, you cannot get any closer than that. I have to wonder the distance between those two cars. It had to have been an inch, maybe even in the millimeters, because that, holy crap, what a way to bring that race to a close.
Yeah, I think maybe we're talking about the sheet of a paper's width. Oh my word, look at how... Oh my word, look at how close that is as they cross the line. Great camera work from Ramirez to get that one for us. That is, I mean, what? A centimetre, maybe 2. Absolutely nothing to split the race winners in the front of this GT3 Sprint Series at Daytona. What a way to end the race. You couldn't call it right up to the line. And that is exactly why. Incredible end to an incredible 40 minutes worth of racing.
There's no words to describe the race that we just saw other than absolutely brilliant. Nothing. It was nothing in time between those two. After 40 minutes of racing action, only in sports car racing will you see something like that. 40 minutes of hard-fought racing action separated by 0.000. Oh my god, that was brilliant.
Yeah, and what a way to end the race. We had 23 laps of Daytona. In the end, split by 0.000 of a second. One of the closest finishes, particularly in road series in the PRL. Of course, in the Oval Series, in the NASCAR Cup and Truck Series, we will have had similarly close finishes. But in the road series, we don't often get finishes as tight as that. But Guillaume Levesque, in the end, takes home his 16th PRL race win. But I think it's pretty safe to say his closest PRL race win. Kevin De Nooijer nearly made it 2 from 2, denied by a centimetre or two, but will still maintain the championship lead heading to Jerez next week. Christian Steenberg sat back and watched all that unfold, and he probably didn't know who won the race until he could look closely at the timing page. He finished in 3rd in a good day for the Team PGZ duo. Aidan Young was 4th after a great run through the field from 13th in his Chevy, with Juan Lamu just behind him, less than a tenth between those two, in 4th and 5th. Jayden Conwright, P6 for Fildenez Racing, ahead of Chris Beats and Elliot Budzinski in the top 8. Antoine Lecharité after his moment down at turn 1, and Simon Theriault rounded out our top 10. We will roll on to see Corbin Lenaway in P11 ahead of Ubaldo Diaz and Ethan Bass in 12th and 13th. Ryan Pucktel and Kevin Simpson were our top 15, with Emmett Linkfist, Peter Nodwell, Nick Ledecky, Chris Stewart and Uthman Alawai inside the top 20. Of course, top 20 by less than 40 seconds in a very tightly packed field, even after 40 minutes worth of racing. Steve Baker was 21st ahead of Sean Carmody. Those two only stood by 6,000ths of a second in another photo finish. Joshua Spears and Devin Brock 23rd and 24th, with Brock winning out in the AM category all the way down there in 24th. Anderson 25th. Kevin Kienitz in 26th with Alex de Almeida. Daniel Haynes, Blake ZT, of course, race winner last time out at Long Beach, and Mark Elliott inside the top 30. More drivers still to come, and we've got Jermaine Warren and Gavin Ammerman in 31st and 32nd. William Benson, Miguel Angel Fonseca, and Matt Stadniuk with a 35 drivers that finished on the lead lap. David Mendonca was 2 laps down, and Nicolas Lopez Gonzalez was 3, Max Italy 4, and Nicolas Mazza 5 after he briefly led the race, didn't he? On the timing tower in the number 3. Marc-Andre Garon was P40 a long way down, 16 laps down, as we have the final non-finishers of the race just to run you through. Who finished just outside the top 40. Gonzalo Cortez, Jason Allen, Alex Carver, and Matthew Biseglia. What a way to end the evening. What a race in the end at the front of the field. And we're going to be able to talk to our race winner. I think we can just about call him the race winner, Guillaume Levesque. Guillaume, welcome in. I'm not too sure you've had many tighter finishes than that one. Talk us through the end of that race.
To be honest, I never had a closest finish to that. I mean, how could you? Because it's 0-0-0, so it's impossible to be closer than that. I had to pull out every trick I had on those kind of finish to get Kevin, because he were having always a pretty good run out of the bus stop. So yeah, props to him. It was a really, really cool race to do. But yeah, we started with the fuel safe simulator as usual with Daytona, and then I went for the move, and I think I got the race into pit lane also. So yeah, and I had to save a bit after pit, but really not much, maybe 0.4 of a liter. And then it was the game for the end, and then yeah, it was really, really cool.
I mean, talk us through the strategy as well through that race, because you were so close in that front train to fall all the way through. You were allowing others to lead the race in the first half. You then took the lead. What was the thinking behind that? Were you more comfortable leading? Had you saved enough fuel?
I was more comfortable, especially into the bus stop, especially because of the incident points, because we only can have 13 and then we have a drive-through. And when I was falling really close to Kevin, I was struggling a bit to see the bus stop, and I took 3x in I think first 4 lap. So I was like, oh my, okay, I need to do something about it. And then when I went in front, I was okay, I think I'm able to still save pretty much the same amount of fuel, but being in front and seeing the bus stop. And it worked pretty well, because I didn't add any incident point after I went to the front. And then yeah, we waited for the pit, and after that we go and we hope for the best.
Well, I mean, congratulations either way. Fantastic result for you tonight, and in a fantastic race as well, Guillaume. It's been a pleasure to speak to you once again. Hopefully, after next week at Jerez, we'll be able to speak to you once again.
Yeah, we will see. Jerez will be something else because the prep of Daytona 24, so it will be minimal prep for it. So we will see what will happen there. Have a good one. Thanks to you guys for this broadcast every time.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Guillaume. Congratulations again, and we will speak to you soon. Guillaume Levesque there, a winner overall by the barest of margins. And Ron, he won it over Kevin Denoyer, and he joins you now.
Yeah, Kevin Denoyer now joining us in the commentary booth. Now, Kevin, I don't know what to say because there are no words in the English language that can be said in the time between you two at the line. Talk us through that brilliant race that we just saw here at Daytona.
Well, I didn't even know it was going to be that close at the line because I was struggling so much in the infield. Gage just has so much traction on that Corvette. But, I thought I won at first. It showed me on the timing page as P1, but then it like updated and I was P2, and there's no delta. It's insane. It was so close.
Yeah, from our perspective as well here on the broadcast, it had you as winning it by 1/1000th of a second for a very brief moment that dipped you behind him, and still a really hard-fought fight to the line. And I was kind of expecting that run coming to the checkered flag for you two to cross that line side by side, and couldn't have gotten any closer if y'all even tried to script it. But that was a brilliant way to bring this race to a close, and another good race for you this season.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, ideally I wanted to keep P1, but, you know, it's Daytona, you can't really shake people off. And then I had that incident with Antoine. I'm not sure what happened. It looked like he lost it. Then him losing it hit into my car, but then nothing happened to me. But luckily, nothing happened to me. But, yeah, it was a fun race.
And from our perspective in the commentary booth, that was a blast to cover all of tonight's racing action from the PRL GT3 Fixed and Sprint Series, and you gave us one heck of a battle coming to the line, and gonna be heading to Jerez in 1 week's time. So what are your thoughts heading into that race?
You know what? I have no idea, honestly. I think the last time I drove that track was 2 years ago. I remember it being kind of fun, but I'm gonna need a little refresher. I haven't driven it in a long time. Hopefully it's good.
Well, fingers crossed the racing action is going to be very, very good there as well. But Kevin Denoyer, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and well done on the brilliant drive here to come up second by the smallest of margins physically possible. But thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Great to have Kevin Denoyer, championship leader, of course, in the pro category in the Sprint Series after a win and a second place. Great to be able to speak to him. And in the AM class, it was a win for Devin Brock. Devin, welcome in. Congratulations. A good race for you, able to bring it home in the end. How was that race for you in the mid-pack?
It was pretty fun. It was a lot of fun battling with some of the guys in the middle pack. You know, most of the pros, especially, really tightly even. Especially because, you know, it's like Kevin said in his interview that, you know, it's Daytona, it's heavy, it's all drafting. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But it was good. It definitely went better than I expected because I knew McLaren may or may not, at least for me, be the strongest car here. In terms of getting around here, so definitely a positive way to get out of here with this win.
A podium in class, of course, last week at Long Beach, a win here. Do you think you can kind of build on this into the next few weeks? Jerez coming up?
Yeah, definitely. Not too familiar with Jerez, so definitely need to sit down and really practice with that one, take some time with that one, and learn the track. But definitely, that's the key to it. You know, just start chaining together podiums, if possible, wins to be able to bring home the championship toward the end of the year. So.
Congratulations, Devin. Great win for you in the AM class. Hopefully, you'll be back towards the front next week, but we'll see you then at Jerez.
Gotcha. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Great to speak to Devin Brock. And we're also going to be able to get a quick word from Aiden Young after finishing 4th in that race in the Pro Class. Aiden, welcome in. Congratulations on the top 4. 13th to 4th. Decent race for you.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't expecting to join into the race. I joined late for qualifying. It was like, well, this might not go as expected. So I was like, you know what? Might as well just try and have fun with it. I'll probably be hopping in and out maybe a couple times during the season. Don't think I'll be able to finish the full season, unfortunately. So just each race I show up, I'll just try and do for fun and not interrupt the championship fight too much. But because it was Daytona, I had kind of confidence after winning GT4 on Monday, so carried that over and then just focused on my race and tried to gain as many positions as possible. And when I was passing people, I was like, you boys want to go front? Come on, follow me, let's go.
And I mean, 4th top 5 finish in the GT3s. We know you so well in the GT4s. How much of a step change is it to go from a GT4 to a GT3?
It's definitely a bit of a pace change, yeah. Because the GT4, it's a lot slower, so the corners, you have more distance between them, kind of, or at least it feels like that because of the car's slower. There's also less downforce, but the car kind of actually feels more planted in the GT4, and it's like you can brake later, you can get to the gas a lot sooner, whereas the GT3, it's kind of like a set and point type deal. You have to brake earlier though, but you also don't want to use and abuse too much of the ABS because otherwise you kill your tires. So having to learn that, and just hop from the GT4, I had to practice in basically all week in that, and then maybe only an hour or 2 with the GT3 car is definitely a bit of a challenge, but I managed to learn it in the couple laps I had in qualifying. By my final lap, I managed to do, I think with no draft, I did a 43.9, so I was pretty happy with that in qualifying, and then I just carried that momentum through to the race and tried to go as forward as possible.
Well, either way, congratulations. P13 to P4 is no mean feat, particularly in a field such as this. Aiden, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll get to speak to you again in the coming weeks, maybe in the GT3s, but definitely in the GT4s.
Yeah, thank you.
Great to be able to speak to all of our, a lot of our front-running drivers in the end of that race. But Ron, my word, how do we sum that race up? There was absolutely nothing on the line, quite literally nothing. We're going to head to Jerez next week. I think it's unlikely we're going to get a similar sort of finish, but definitely a race of high quality such as the one we've seen tonight.
Yeah, I think Jerez going to be a little bit of a blend of the characteristics of the racing that we just saw here tonight at Daytona and some parts of what we saw at Long Beach 1 week ago. That track, historic in nature, Yuso's Formula One back in the day, home to one of the most iconic F1 moments in the sport's history for that matter. But Jerez, a unique racetrack to say the very least, and a fun one that these drivers are looking to give another good show at. But here at Daytona, genuinely, the racing could not have been closer. Even in the fixed race that we had earlier on, it was brilliant from start to finish. I believe I will not be here come time for the next broadcast, as Ian O'Leary will be joining you on these broadcasts there. But I gotta say, being a part of the opening 2 races of this season has been absolutely brilliant. The racing has been about as close as you could get. The battles have been fair but intense, and I'm really looking forward to staying tuned for the rest of the season here on RaceSpotTV, because the action is gonna be in spades.
Yeah, no, obviously, thank you to you for stepping in last couple of weeks. It's been a pleasure as always. But yeah, really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in 7 days' time at Jerez. You'll have to join us then. Don't forget, though, in the meantime, we've got the Truck Series tomorrow in PRL. We've got Thursday night action to come as well before we get to the IndyCar Series on Sunday night. That'll be after the 24 hours of Daytona, all bringing to you live on RaceSpotTV. So we hope to see you there for one of those races. But for myself, Darren Thacker, Ramon's alongside me in the commentary box, and Ramiro Agustin Gennaro, who's brought you some fantastic photos, including this one at the end. We'll say thank you for watching us here on RaceSpotTV, and we'll see you next time when we return in the GT3 Fixed and Sprint Series at Jerez.